Chapter 6:12. I accept your conditions. Barbara looked at Meg in silence for a long time before finally nodding. However, she quickly added, however, even though I may be your employee now, you have to treat me like a princess. I am the only princess of the Moon Nation, and I may even become the queen of the Moon Nation in the future. Since you know that you're my employee now, then you have to treat me like an employee. My restaurant doesn't need a princess, I only need a waitress who can serve the dishes. Meg shook his head, and there was no room for negotiation in his tone. This guy is simply too rude. Barbara was a little annoyed, but she could only swallow her anger when she saw Meg's expression. This guy was different from all the men she had met in the past. Welcome to Amy's. The restaurant is about to open for business, so we have to start eating first. We'll talk about the details after the restaurant closes. You don't have to work at noon, you just have to watch from the sidelines. Pay attention to Mia's work, your mission is to be able to complete her work on your own one day. Meg saw that Barbara had no objections, and a benevolent smile finally appeared on his face. He glanced at the clock on the wall, and sat down again to eat. Welcome. Welcome. Amy clapped her little hands, and looked at Barbara with a smile as she said, Hello, big sister Barbara, I'm Amy. Hello, I'm Mia. You can call me Mia. We'll be colleagues from now on. Mia also looked at Barbara with a smile. Aisha. Sally nodded slightly in response. Ben. Forget it, I'll allow you to call me Barbara. Barbara looked at the smiles on everyone's faces, and a sense of familiarity suddenly welled up in her heart. She nodded slightly, and returned to her seat with her plate. I'm Meg. You can call me boss like the rest of them. Meg looked at Barbara with a smile. He wanted a waitress, and a waitress fell from the sky. If it weren't for the fact that the system didn't say anything, he would have thought that the waitress was a free gift from the system. Meg was very satisfied with the deal. As long as Barbara could take over Mia's job, she could spend her time and energy at the ice cream shop except during peak hours. He was looking forward to the profits that the ice cream shop could bring him. Big Sister Barbara, aside from roast beef, Father's other dishes are also super delicious, Amy suggested as she took a bite out of a ruggiemo. I just want to eat roast meat right now. Barbara was unmoved, and continued to chew on her own beef. Meg and the rest finished their lunch very quickly, and only Amy and Barbara were left eating slowly. Meg glanced at the clock on the wall, and quickly walked to the entrance of the restaurant. What was supposed to be a leisurely lunch became a little rushed because of Barbara, an uninvited guest. Thankfully, the timing was just right. Welcome, Meg said with a smile as he pushed open the door to the restaurant and looked at the long line of customers outside. Crassus and Julian, who were standing at the very front, walked in first, and their eyes fell on Barbara, who was sitting next to Amy. That's... Julian's eyes lit up when he saw the light pink crescent moon between Barbara's eyebrows. Could it be that she was teleported from there? The teleportation portal under the restaurant leads to that place. Crassus also looked a little surprised. Hello, Master Halfbeard, Master Turtle, Amy greeted the two with a ruggiemo in her hand. What powerful magic waves. These two old men don't seem to be any weaker than Father and Master. Could it be that they are also great magic casters? Isn't it said that the power of magic casters is very weak on this continent, and there are no great magic casters? Barbara turned to look at Crassus and Urian with a hint of bewilderment in her heart. Crassus and Julian looked at each other, and didn't say anything. They sat down at their usual seats, and ordered their usual food. Mr. Mac, who's that girl? Is she a new waitress? Harrison asked curiously as he came in and took a look at Barbara. Yes, she just started today, and hasn't officially started work yet. Meg nodded with a smile. You're so smart, Harrison said with admiration as he gave Meg a thumbs up. Meg only smiled and didn't say anything. He was really lucky this time. The restaurant was quickly filled to the brim with customers, and Babla's mouth gaped open as she held the last kebab in her hand. She looked at Yabamiya, who was making her way through one table after another, and listened to the names of the dishes that came out of the customers' mouths. She felt as if her mind had been completely filled with information. There were so many dishes, so many customers, and so many different requests. How could she remember them all in such a short time? Barbara, who had been full of confidence, began to worry and doubt. In a study in the Moreton Manor, a middle-aged man whispered to Cyril, "Second young master, young Mistress Gloria has been busy clearing out the fabrics in the warehouse for the past 2 days. She's also hired many tailors, and it seems that she's making some clothes." Making clothes. Hasn't the suede textiles shop been losing money for many years? Could it be that the orders have increased after she took over? Cyril raised an eyebrow as he looked at the middle-aged man with a slightly nervous expression. The fact that Gloria had become a candidate to inherit family Moreton was like a thorn in his throat. Even though she had only inherited a textiles shop that had been losing money for many years, he still couldn't help but pay attention to her. That's not the case from what I understand. The suede textile shop hasn't received many new orders, and there aren't many customers coming in to customize clothes. It's no different from usual. According to the employees of the suede textile shop, Miss Gloria seems to be planning to make a batch of clothes according to the sizes of the clothes and sell them. The middle-aged man shook his head. Chapter 6:13. Are you sure I'll be able to do what he's doing? Barbara asked with incredulity as she looked at Meg, who had flipped the sign on the door and closed the door behind him. Our princess doesn't even have that much confidence. Meg looked at Barbara with a question of his own. Even he didn't have any confidence in himself, let alone her. Of course I do. Barbara blushed slightly as she stomped her foot, and raised her voice as she said, "It's just ordering and serving dishes. I can do that with ease." "I certainly hope so." Meg shrugged as he sized up Barbara with a serious expression. "What are you doing?" Barbara retracted her foot as she looked at Meg with a wary expression. "Don't worry, big sister Barbara. Father won't be interested in your short legs," Amy consoled as she carried Ugly Duckling in her arms. "Who said I have short legs? My legs are clearly very long," Barbara retorted with an indignant expression. She stood on her tiptoes, and a long and slender leg emerged from under her skirt. Just from the ratio alone, it didn't appear to be too short. Right at this moment, Sally took a step forward, and a long and slender leg emerged from under her cheapao. Barbara looked at the pair of long legs that were almost as tall as her chest, and silently retracted her leg as she looked at Sally with a pitiable and envious expression. The heavenly king covers the earth tiger, Babla is 1.5 meters tall. Amy smiled happily. A smile appeared on Meg's face. He didn't know where Amy had learned to say that, but Barbara wasn't 1.5 meters tall. She was probably only 1.4 meters tall. "What kind of clothes do you want to wear?" Meg asked the dejected Barbara. Barbara looked up at Meg with a perplexed expression. Yabamiya smiled and said, "The boss is going to prepare a nice uniform for you, just like the one that Aisha and I have." Barbara's eyes lit up when she saw Yabamiya's and Sally's clothes. She looked at Meg expectantly and said, "I like pretty dresses. It's best if they're pink. They're the most suitable for a cute little princess like me." "Do you know what is the most taboo principle in pairing?" Meg looked into Barbara's eyes and said seriously. "No skirt?" Barbara asked hesitantly. "No, it's the same color from head to toe, even including socks." Meg pointed at Barbara's feet, and a pink sock peeked out from her pink shoes. How is that possible? Pink was obviously so cute. Was there anything cuter than pink? It's the color of a princess, Barbara said indignantly. However, she still instinctively moved her foot back a little as she glared at Mag. Mag rolled his eyes and pursed his lips. From your head to your feet, people who don't know you would think you just rolled out of pink flour. I. Barbara opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to retort. She lowered her head and looked at the outfit that she had liked for over 10 years. Now that Mag had said that, it did indeed look a little strange. What is pink flour? Can it be used to make pink rigiamo? Amy asked curiously. Well, in theory, yes, if there is really pink flour in the world. Meg nodded with a smile. I want to eat. Amy looked expectant. Is the focus on the flour? Barbara was a little angry at the two people who were so off topic, but she still tried to control her emotions. She looked at Meg and said, since you don't think my taste is good, what kind of clothes do you want me to wear? I think your taste is worse than mine. It's rare to find such a person in the world. Of course, it can't be me. Meg shook his head slightly. Mag looked at Barbara, who was about to retort, and continued, I will help you decide on the clothes. When the time comes, you can choose to wear your own clothes or the clothes that I custom-made for you. You can choose for yourself. If you don't have anywhere to go at noon, you can stay in the restaurant. But you'd better find a place to stay at night. The restaurant doesn't provide lodging. Then where will I stay? Barbara was confused. She hesitated for a moment and asked, do you have a palace here? If this maiden had transmigrated to another place, Mag felt that in less than 3 minutes, the intelligence and common sense that she had exposed would be enough for others to devour her. After giving her a brief introduction to Chaos City, Meg asked Yabamiya to take her out for a walk, and if possible, find her a place to stay. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome for her to stay at the restaurant at night. Father, I'm going out to play too. Amy also carried Ugly Duckling out. She also had some rest time at noon. I want to see how different this world is from the Moon Nation. Barbara took a deep breath before pushing open the restaurant's door. The vibrant autumn sun shone down on her, but it didn't make her feel dry. Instead, it was rather warm. She was greeted by the sight of a grand plaza. Doves of peace were eating insects on the grass, an elf with pointy ears was sitting on the grass reading a book, and a tall orc was carrying a little orc with a solemn expression. The little orc's sullen expression indicated that he had most likely been caught by his father again after doing something bad. Everything looked so special, and Barbara was quite unfamiliar with them. So these were the life forms of the continent. Even though they looked a little different from the residents of the Moon Nation, they weren't as grotesque as the teachers and books described them to be. The elf in the restaurant and the elf sitting on the grass were both so beautiful that she couldn't take her eyes off them. The orc was a little ugly, but the father and son didn't appear to be disgusting. Everything looked so harmonious, and Barbara's nervousness and anxiety eased significantly. This was completely different from the barbaric world that she had imagined. Barbara looked left and right. Suddenly, her eyes widened, and she exclaimed, "Let go of that girl." Ha! Yabamiya also looked in that direction with a confused expression. Cece and Lulu just so happened to be walking out of the magic potion shop hand in hand with sweet smiles on their faces. She didn't know what they were talking about, but their hands were tightly clasped together, and it was as if nothing could separate them. Mia, Amy, and this young lady is. Cece turned to Barbara with a smile. Lulu was looking at Barbara with a wary expression, and she tightened her grip on Cece's hand, hiding her behind her back. She could sense a hint of hostility from this young lady. Chapter 6:14. A hint of light appeared on Barbara's pink wand, and she pointed it in Lulu's direction. Lulu looked at Barbara with a wary expression. This little girl had come out of Amy's with Amy and the others, and she didn't appear to be an enemy, so for some reason, she was suddenly displaying hostility toward him. However, this little girl was very young, petite, and frail, and he felt like he could kill her with a single finger. As such, he didn't know how to deal with her, and could only stand in front of Cece and observe the situation from afar. It's spatial magic, and it's of a very high level. Be careful. Cece cautioned as she stood behind Lulu, and a wand had appeared in her hand. However, as soon as her voice trailed off, the tall and burly Lulu seemed to have been lifted into the air by a massive invisible hand. His feet were suspended in mid-air, and he immediately let go of Cece. At the same time, he threw a punch forward, and it easily pierced through the air barrier. However, the restraints binding his body were still there, and he was completely unable to break free. Thus, he was suspended in mid-air close to 2 meters in the air, unable to move up or down. The big dumb bear is flying. Big Sister Bobla is so awesome. Amy's eyes immediately lit up at the sight of Ugly Duckling's flight. Lulu! Cece exclaimed as she looked at Barbara with wariness and hostility in her eyes. Little girl, why did you attack Lulu? That's right, Big Sister Barbara, Big Sister Cece, and the Big Dumb Bear are all very good friends of ours. Even though the Big Dumb Bear is a little dumb, he's actually a good person. Let him fly for a while before coming down. Amy also made her way over to Barbara with a perplexed look on her face. I feel like there's some sort of misunderstanding between the two of you. Or perhaps there's some sort of enmity between the two of you. Yabamiya said nervously. Due to her low combat strength, she was at a loss for what to do in a situation where a fight broke out at the slightest disagreement. In our Moon Nation, men are absolutely not allowed to hold women's hands in public. This is disrespectful to women and also a kind of blasphemy. It will bring bad luck to women. This guy is holding your hand in broad daylight, and you're still speaking up for him. That's ridiculous. Bobla looked at Cece with an exasperated expression as if she were a concerned mother. Cece faltered slightly upon hearing this. She put away her wand, and chuckled as she said, Little girl, we've been married for a long time, and we grew up together. It's very normal for us to hold hands, and it's an expression of our trust and love. I don't know where the Moon Nation you're talking about is, but in Chaos City, or in most places on the Norland continent, holding hands between husband and wife is not something that people would view as a scourge. That's right. If father held my hand to school, would you beat him to death as well? Amy asked with a curious look on her face. Is that so? Barbara turned to Cece with a hesitant expression. She didn't appear to be forced to hold hands, and she was more concerned about the big man in the air. Meg pushed open the door, and said to Barbara, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Only by respecting the culture and living habits of different places can you truly integrate into them. I hope you can remember this. This is a very normal thing to do here. Meg didn't really want to see this public display of affection. After all, he was also single, and Cece and Lulu were a model couple who often displayed affection on a large scale, causing tons of harm to all of the other single people. However, to beat someone to death just because they were holding hands. That was a little too violent. Could it be that this girl had undergone FFF training before coming here? How could this be normal? How could a man and woman be together? Even if you two are in love, holding hands in front of others will still result in you being burned to death. Barbara said with a righteous expression. She didn't seem to acknowledge or yield to Meg's words in the slightest. Everyone looked at one another. Well, they were just holding hands and taking a stroll outside. They didn't do anything immoral. Even though you're single, you shouldn't have such thoughts. Meg didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Big Sister Barbara, your thoughts are very interesting. Also, I'm very good at lighting fires. Amy said happily. She extended her little hand, and a bluish-purple flame appeared in her palm. She looked at Lulu with an eager expression. That's right, women's rights should be defended by us. We can't let those stinky men take advantage of us, and we can't tolerate this kind of thing happening. Otherwise, we girls will end up hurting ourselves in the end. After getting Amy's approval, Barbara was even more confident. She looked at Lulu, who was floating in the air, and said in a judgmental tone, "Big stupid bear, because you've made an unforgivable mistake, I'm going to judge you now, tie you to a stake and burn you to death." Lulu still had a simple and honest smile on her face. Although she could feel the hostility of this little girl in front of her, since she was with Meg and the others, she couldn't do anything to her. She believed that Meg could handle this matter, so she turned her gaze to Meg. "I can't do anything about this matter. This already involves consciousness and cognition." Meg shrugged with a smile, and said, "In situations like this, we usually just have to give her a good beating." "I'm very touched by your words, little girl, but Lulu is very important to me. If you still insist on doing something, then we'll have to do something as well." Cece looked at Barbara with a smile as her wand appeared in her hand. Lulu's smile also faded. Seeing as Meg wasn't going to do anything, then they had to resolve this matter themselves. 7th tier spatial magic was indeed quite powerful, but he was also only at the 7th tier. "I won't listen. I won't listen. I'm going to put this guy on a stake today and teach him the consequences of flirting with women." Barbara shook her head vigorously. She looked at the wand in Cece's hand, but she wasn't concerned in the slightest. This beautiful big sister didn't appear to be very powerful, so there was no need for her to be overly concerned. "Are they going to fight?" Amy stood off to the side with Ugly Duckling in her arms, and looked on with anticipation in her eyes. Roar! "Do you have a palace here? I want to live in a palace." Yabamiya returned to the restaurant with Barbara in the evening. She asked with a serious expression as soon as they entered. "There's no king in Chaos City, so there's no palace." Meg shook his head. This girl was dreaming. "Ah. Then what should I do? There's no crystal bed, no bathtub, no wardrobe, and even the toilet smells. How am I supposed to live in a place like this? Anne. I saw a furry thing just now. What am I supposed to do if it comes out at night?" Barbara became more and more aggrieved as she spoke. She pouted as if she was going to cry. It was a little mouse. "I think it's quite cute," Yabamiya added softly. "It's gray, furry, and has a pointy mouth and a long tail. How can something like that be worthy of the word cute?" Barbara couldn't help but raise her voice a few octaves. "Even if there's a wardrobe now, you don't have any clothes to hang in there." Mag rolled his eyes. However, it was understandable that a princess who had been living a life of luxury would find it hard to accept that she had to live a life of poverty all of a sudden. "If you want a palace, we have one upstairs. Big Sister Barbara, why don't you stay upstairs? Our toilet smells really good." Amy, who had just returned from school, said with a smile. "Really?" Barbara's eyes immediately lit up. "Boss, did you build a palace upstairs?" Yabamiya also looked at Meg with curiosity and anticipation. She hadn't seen what a palace looked like yet. "The restaurant doesn't provide accommodation, so Meg shook his head. However, before Meg had a chance to finish his sentence, Barbara had already run upstairs. Hee. Amy also ran upstairs with Ugly Duckling in her hand. "Boss, can I go take a look? I haven't seen a palace yet." Yabamiya also looked at Meg with anticipation in her eyes. Go on, go on. Meg raised a hand with a resigned expression. There was no palace upstairs, it was just a small amusement park. Let's go together, Aisha. Yabamiya dragged Sally upstairs with an elated expression. I have to think of a way to get this girl to move out. Just the thought of living with a stranger makes me uncomfortable. Meg thought to himself. He took a look at the time, and found that there was still some time before the restaurant opened for business. He thought to himself for a moment before also making his way upstairs. There weren't any extra rooms in the house anyway. Barbara would most likely be a little disappointed after seeing the amusement park, so he could just get Mia to find her a slightly better place to live. Wow! This is so fun. This horse can move on its own. Can I wear these shoes with wheels? Oi, 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 help me up, I'm going to fall. Ouch! Before Meg had even reached the second floor, the joyful voices of the girls could already be heard coming from upstairs. The loudest one among them was none other than Barbara. Meg made his way over to the door, and Barbara was wearing a pair of ice skates, and was crawling up from the ground. She was rubbing her legs with an elated smile on her face. Sally and Yabamiya were sitting on either side of a seesaw, and even Sally had a vibrant smile on her face. Are you guys really that fun? Meg stood at the door with his mouth slightly agape. He found it difficult to accept what he was seeing. Chapter 6:16. Meg looked at the radiant smile on Barbara's face, and realized for the first time that she was rather adorable when she smiled. At least, she was much more adorable than the man who had just declared that he would burn the woman's hand to death. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that she was just a little princess who had been raised in a palace and was used to living a comfortable life. It was obviously not easy for her to quickly understand the habits of this world after transmigrating to this world. After all, not everyone in this world was ready to transmigrate at any time. Seeking common ground while reserving differences was the right attitude to look at problems. From another perspective, it was just like how he couldn't stand this world's attitude toward half-humans, and wanted to correct this mistake. However, this world's attitude toward half-humans was completely different. But there's no crystal bed for you to stay in here, nor is there a super large wardrobe for you to store your clothes in. In fact, there's not even a wooden bed. Meg looked at Barbara and shook his head. As long as you let me stay here, I don't mind even if there's no bed. I really love this place. Barbara shook her head, and her face was still filled with excitement. No, I have connections. Meg still shook his head. I've never begged anyone in my entire life. Barbara's serious expression suddenly changed, and she pouted as she looked at Meg with a pitiful expression. But can I beg you this time to let me stay here? I'm even willing to sleep on the floor. Meg raised an eyebrow at the sight of Barbara's earnest expression. All of a sudden, she was no longer behaving like a domineering princess. Instead, she looked rather pitiful, and he was at a loss for what to do. Boss, Barbara really doesn't seem to like the place I'm staying in, and she's really afraid of rats. Why don't you let her stay here until she finds a suitable place to stay? Yabamiya said softly as she looked at Barbara sympathetically. Her heart ached when she saw the girl screaming and hiding in her arms. If she didn't go, then she would be like her, without a home or family. Yes, father. Let big sister Barbara stay here. That way, I can teach her the rules of our chaos city, and she won't get into fights with people on the streets. Amy also shook Meg's hand in a pleading manner. You haven't even learned it yourself, yet you want to teach others. Meg brushed Amy's nose with his finger and stared into Barbara's eyes for a while before nodding slightly and saying, I can agree to let you stay. Before Barbara could cheer, Meg continued, however, I won't provide you with anything to stay in. You can use the bathroom between 10 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., but you have to clean the bathroom after you use it. You can't leave a single strand of hair behind. You can only go upstairs when you want to sleep at night, and you can only move around in this room. Could it be that they encountered that person? That's impossible. Hasn't that person already been crippled? We've already searched through several islands, but we still haven't found any traces of them. The black-robed figures sitting on the slope discussed in low voices with grave expressions. Take a team to Chaos City and find out what the situation is like. Send a flying falcon to report back, Seuss instructed the black-robed magic caster. Yes. The black-robed magic caster nodded before quickly disappearing into the canyon with a 7-man team. Let's continue. After we finish searching this island today, there are only 3 islands left. That guy is most likely on one of those 3 islands. Seuss looked at the black-robed figures sitting on the slope, and said in a grim voice before leading the way into the dense forest. Yes. All of the black-robed figures hurriedly followed along. Chapter 6:17. Branley walked around in a circle before turning to the man, and saying, "Find out if there have been any reports of missing persons in Chaos City in the past 2 days. If there aren't any, then there's no need to investigate this matter." But the man faltered. Branley shook his head, and interjected, "Our great temple is responsible for the safety and stability of the residents of Chaos City. Instead of wasting time on such trivial matters, why don't we spend more time on proper business?" Branley shook his head, and turned to leave. The man turned to the Grey Temple employee who was conducting a thorough investigation, and said, "Take away all of the suspicious items, then get the City Lord's castle to cooperate with the investigation of the missing persons cases. Could it be that something is about to happen in Chaos City? So be it. Chaos City has never been peaceful anyway." Branley murmured to himself as he shook his head before making his way over to the black horse-drawn carriage parked nearby. In the northern part of Chaos City, a horse-drawn carriage slowly passed through the city gate. "I don't know when I'll be able to come back to Chaos City again. Take care, Alex." Louis drew back the curtain of the carriage, and turned to look at the city gate tower before lowering the curtain again. The horse-drawn carriage continued onward, and soon disappeared on a straight road. On the northwestern border of the Roth Empire, there was a burly man in a suit of golden armor standing on the edge of a steep canyon. The dry winds blowing from the northwestern side of the canyon made his red cape flap loudly in the wind. "Your Highness, the cheetahs still haven't been able to find any substantial contact with Alex. Perhaps he didn't leave Chaos City through the military," a young man in a black robe said in a quiet voice. "How many friends do you think Alex has, Quine?" Sean was still looking at the other side of the canyon, where there was a stronghold constructed from giant black rocks. He could clearly see the orc standing in front of the stronghold with a smile on his face. Quine was silent for a moment before replying, "According to our investigations over the past few years, he almost doesn't have any friends. He only has some comrades and subordinates from the military, and his relationship with them is purely that of a superior and subordinate." Sean turned around and looked at Sean with a smile, and asked, "Since that's the case, who would do such a thing even though they know that it might bring about big trouble or even death? Apart from those soldiers who have experienced life and death on the battlefield, who would do such a thing?" Sean was silent for a while, then nodded and said, "Your Highness is right. But the cheetahs have been tracking them for a long time, and they still haven't found anything. Should we expand the scope, or capture some of them for interrogation? Since they weren't even afraid of death 3 years ago, even if you capture them, the person who did this will definitely not reveal any useful information." Sean shook his head. "Keep an eye on them. Since Alex has been crippled, it's impossible for those who know his whereabouts not to see him for the rest of their lives." "Yes." Ryan nodded, turned around, and left quickly. Soon, He rode a big black bird and disappeared from the cliff. It's important to make more friends. Alex, where are you? If you're not dead, I won't be able to sleep peacefully. Sean's brows furrowed, but a faint smile quickly appeared on his face, and he said, Josh should be more anxious than I am. When we find Alex, it'll be time for the final battle. We've arrived at Chaos City. In the northern part of Chaos City, a young elf in a gray linen robe looked up at the city gate tower before quickly lowering his head again, and following the crowd into the city. He was wearing a straw hat on his head, holding a cane in his hand, and carrying a tattered bag on his back. He was quite travel-worn, and appeared to be a traveler on the continent. I wonder if Master Alex and the young mistress are really here. I have to find them before those guys do. I don't know how much longer Her Highness can last. The young elf entered the city, and quickly disappeared into an alleyway. A massive island was floating above the vast ocean. Giant dragons' wings would glide across the sky from time to time, but compared to that massive island, they appeared quite small. There were also a series of smaller islands hovering near that massive island, surrounding and protecting it. Giant dragons would also land on those islands. Frost Island. This was the exclusive island of the Frost Dragon tribe, one of the 6-star islands of the Dragon Island. The entire island was enshrouded in blue frost and white snow. Sharp icicles grew wildly downward, like translucent crystals. There were many massive buildings constructed from ice and snow on the island, making it appear as if it were a kingdom of ice and snow. The icy chill could be felt even from several kilometers away. A frost dragon with a wingspan of dozens of meters suddenly landed on the island, and transformed into its human form as soon as it landed. It then walked toward the depths of the island. At this moment, there was an intense debate going on in the huge palace in the middle of the island that was close to 100 meters tall. There was a flat ice surface in the middle of the palace, and the icy blue surface could reflect a person's appearance. There were platforms around the palace that were dozens of meters tall, and there were a few chairs carved out of ice on them. 10 old men sat on the platforms and looked down. There was only one old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles sitting on the platform facing the door. He wore an icy blue crown on his head, and his eyes were closed as if he was about to fall asleep. Fox stood in the middle of the palace, and seemed very small at this moment. Fox, the Frost Dragon tribe has lost many powerful Frost warriors in this war, and the negotiation results you brought back did not give us any benefits at all. Now, you want to be the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe. I will be the first to disagree, an old man with short hair and a short beard said in a low voice. Rankster's death has been confirmed, and the position of the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe has been vacant for 2 years. The people of the Frost Dragon tribe are disunited, and the other 5 tribes look down on us. It is imperative that we elect a new chief. Fox is Rankster's younger brother, and his ability and talent are not inferior to Rankster's. He will be able to break through to 10th tier soon, and is the most powerful person among the younger generation. Moreover, the negotiation this time was conducted by several tribes together. The result cannot be entirely blamed on Fox. Great Elder, I agree to let Fox be the chief of the Frost Dragon tribe, a bearded old man with a long beard said. An old man with a long beard said as he looked at the old man with a crown sitting in the middle. Chapter 6:18. The heated debate reverberated in the empty hall. Fox, who was standing in the middle of the hall, lowered his head slightly. He didn't say anything, but he was secretly looking at the old man in a white robe sitting on the platform with a magic staff beside him. Douglas, the great elder of the Frost Dragon tribe. He was the most powerful person in the Frost Dragon tribe, and also the one with the highest seniority and status. He was the current decision-maker of the Frost Dragon tribe. After Rankster went missing, he regained control of the Frost Dragon tribe. The words of the other elders might have some effect, but he was still the only one who could make the final decision. However, Douglas, who was sitting on the platform, had his eyes closed as if he was asleep. Only Rankster, who had forced him to hand over the position of chief, knew how powerful this old man who had lived for more than 2,200 years was. All right. Douglas, who had been silent all this while, opened his eyes slowly. His slightly hoarse voice echoed in the hall. The debate in the hall stopped immediately, and all the elders looked at Douglas. Go and find Rankster again. I'm not dead yet. This kid won't die so easily, Douglas said slowly. He reached out to grab the magic staff beside him, and disappeared from his seat. All the elders looked at each other. The hall was silent for a while before they all got up and left. Rankster. If you're going to die, why don't you die more thoroughly? You stole my position all those years ago. Even if you're going to die, you won't give it to me. Fox muttered to himself through gritted teeth as he looked at the empty hall. His eyes were red as he gritted his teeth. Old man, you won't live for much longer. When I reach the 10th tier, I can do what Rankster did back then. Fox clenched his fists, and said in his heart. He turned and walked out of the hole. I didn't get her blood the last time. If I want to verify if she's the person I'm looking for, I have to use her blood to verify the dragon origin. Elizabeth stood in the distance, and looked in the direction of the restaurant. She softly said to herself, my 20-year-old coming-of-age ceremony is coming soon. I have to be baptized by the frost dragon origin to fully activate my bloodline and become the most powerful frost dragon. If Fox knew about her existence, he would definitely not let her go. I don't have much time left. Maybe I should talk to her alone. That elf is too vigilant and too smart. Elizabeth shook her head and disappeared on the spot. Please come again. Meg saw the last customer out with a smile, turned over the sign on the door, and walked in. Looking at Sally and the others who were cleaning up the restaurant, he said with a smile, don't be in a hurry to go back after cleaning up the restaurant. Have some supper before you go back. Supper. Boss, is today a special day? Yabamiya asked curiously. Is supper a kind of food? Is it something that can only be late for festivals? Barbara asked curiously. Consider it a celebration for Barbara. Meg smiled at Barbara and said, congratulations on finding your first job. Yeah, congratulations, Barbara. You found a place to live, Yabamiya said with a smile. Thank you, big sister Barbara. Thanks to you, we can eat delicious food again. Amy was also very happy. Congratulations, Sally said with a smile. Me? I. You're welcome. No, I mean. Thank you. Barbara's eyes widened as she looked at everyone with smiles on their faces. Her words were a little incoherent, and everyone burst into laughter. All right, thank you for your hard work today. Order whatever you want to eat. Meg couldn't help but chuckle. Barbara was a little squeamish, but her work ethic was very commendable. She had done a good job as Yabamiya's assistant tonight. At the very least, her service attitude toward the customers was quite good, and she had received the approval of the customers. I want to eat grilled fish. I haven't had any grilled fish today. Amy was the first to raise her hand. Meow, Ugly Duckling's eyes lit up, and it also began to meow. Ugly Duckling, you can't eat supper. You'll get fat if you eat supper. If you get fat. Amy looked down at Ugly Duckling with a dangerous expression. Meow. Ugly Duckling felt a chill run down its spine, and it immediately retracted its head, not daring to move. I want to eat Rujiamo. Yabamiya raised her hand. I want to eat a plate of Yangzhou fried rice, Sally said. I want to eat beef kebabs. Barbara swallowed her saliva. She had already lost count of how many times she had swallowed that night. Big Sister Barbara, do you only eat beef kebabs? I don't think you eat anything else. Amy looked at Barbara with a perplexed expression. Mag was also looking at Barbara with a perplexed expression. Roast beef kebabs were indeed delicious, but it was rather strange for her to insist on choosing roast beef kebabs when there were so many other delicacies to choose from. I think beef kebabs are delicious, Barbara said with an uneasy expression. All right, you two sit here and wait for a while. I'll go make some delicious food for you. I'll make a big serving of grilled fish so everyone can have some. Meg turned and walked into the kitchen. Not long after that, Yabamiya and Sally went into the kitchen to help bring out one dish after another. Meg carefully carried out a large serving of grilled fish, and placed it at the center of the table. He took off his apron as he said, "Let's dig in. There's a lot of supper tonight." "Is this all for me?" Barbara looked at the small mountain of beef kebabs in front of her. There were more than 20 of them, and she looked at Meg with incredulity. "That's right. Eat to your heart's content." Meg nodded with a smile. He picked up a piece of the most tender meat below the fish head with his chopsticks, and placed it in Amy's bowl. Ugly Duckling craned its neck to look at the grilled fish. It then looked up at Amy with an aggrieved expression, and covered its eyes with its little paws. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Then, "I'll help myself." Barbara was elated. 20 beef kebabs were enough to last her for over half a month. It appeared that this restaurant owner wasn't as bad as she had thought. She picked up a beef kebab and began to eat happily. "Barbara, the rujiamo is super delicious too." Yabamiya stood off to the side and took a bite of the rujiamo in her hand with a blissful expression on her face. A golden dragon tail sprang out from under her dress and swept around on the ground. Chapter 6:19. Big Sister Mia is going to become a giant dragon in the future. When that time comes, we'll be able to ask her to fly us into the sky, Amy explained as if she had seen through Barbara's confusion. "That's awesome. I've never seen a giant dragon before." Barbara's eyes lit up as she looked at Yabamiya with anticipation. "Can I transform now?" "No, I don't think I'll ever become a giant dragon. I'm only a half-dragon." Yabamiya shook her head with a dejected expression. Barbara shook her head with a serious expression and said, "How could that be? Big Sister Mia is super awesome. She's able to remember all of the customers' orders without making a single mistake. Even a true giant dragon wouldn't be able to do that. You're much better than a giant dragon." "That's right. You'll become a true giant dragon sooner or later." Meg also smiled. A joyful smile appeared on Yabamiya's face as she shook her head, and said, "Actually, I'm not sad at all. Even if I really become a giant dragon, I still want to be a waitress at the restaurant and serve the customers. I'll reward you with a beef kebab." Meg smiled as he placed a beef kebab onto Yabamiya's plate. This was a true exemplary employee. "Thank you, boss." Yabamiya's smile became even more vibrant. The supper ended in a happy atmosphere. Sally cleaned the table and cutlery before preparing to leave with Yabamiya. "This is your work uniform. Let's see if my taste is better than yours." Meg pulled out a black box from the counter and handed it to Barbara. "Work uniform." Yabamiya made her way over curiously. Sally also looked over curiously. She wondered what kind of work uniform Meg was going to give to Barbara this time. "I don't think there's anything wrong with my taste, so I'm not looking forward to it at all," Barbara emphasized in a serious manner. However, she still quickly placed the box on a clean table and slowly lifted the lid with her hands. "Wow, a white and blue dress with beautiful lace. It looks so pretty." Yabamiya couldn't help but exclaim as she looked at the dress in the box. It's a dress. And there's a pair of beautiful little black shoes. Amy also stood on her tiptoes as she looked at the dress in the box. Boss is so awesome. He can design so many clothes. Does he have a tailor's room? Sally's eyes to look at Meg's to see how to make all kinds of things. Meg's eyes to look at the dress, to pull the dress, to lift, to look to look to the dress. Barbara's eyes also lit up. She couldn't move her eyes away from the dress in the box. She reached out with both hands and gently lifted the dress up. The dress was beige in color. The lace at the collar, the lace at the front, and the small lace at the lotus leaf folds were pinkish blue. The cuffs and the satin belt at the waist were light blue. The dress was smooth and soft to the touch. The dress also had a tutu feel to it, and it looked very cute. It's so beautiful. It's so cute. I love it so much. Barbara's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She stared at the dress in her hands in disbelief. There wasn't a single speck of her favorite pink color on the dress, but it deeply touched her heart. There were no words to express her love for this dress. Do you like it? Meg asked with a smile. I like it. Barbara nodded without hesitation. She blushed at the sight of Meg's smile, and her voice lowered a few notches as she said, I mean, it's not bad. Yabamiya and Sally also smiled. This little girl was easier to get along with than they had imagined. All right, everyone has worked hard today. We still have to open for business tomorrow, so let's go back first. Meg looked at everyone as he spoke. Then, he turned to Yabamiya and said, Mia, look around for a place with a slightly better environment to rent. Okay. Yabamiya nodded. She bade farewell to Sally and Meg and went home after work. Are you still going to kick me out? Barbara looked at Meg with a pitiful expression. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just going to find a more suitable place for you to live. I don't like living with anyone other than Amy. There will be a lot of inconveniences. So, once we find a place to live, you'll have to move out. Meg shook his head slightly. His expression and tone didn't have the slightest intention of negotiating. All right. Barbara stared at Meg's face for a while, and finally nodded. However, she quickly emphasized, but there can't be any furry things in there. If there is, I definitely won't live there. I can fulfill that condition. Meg nodded with a smile. He squatted down and picked up the yawning Amy, as well as the sleeping ugly duckling. He looked at Barbara and said, After I give Amy a bath, I'll teach you how to take a bath. Huh? Barbara faltered slightly. A thought seemed to have occurred to her, and her face immediately flushed. She glowered at Meg and said, I don't want to stay in the bathroom with you. I don't need you to teach me how to take a bath. What the hell are you thinking? I'm just going to teach you how to use the tap. Meg rolled his eyes. Was this girl still trying to misunderstand him? He carried Amy upstairs. Amy, who was lying on Meg's shoulder, looked at Barbara with a smile, and said, Big sister Barbara, Father will only give Amy a bath. He won't give you a bath. I'm not thinking of anything weird. Barbara's face became even redder. She clenched her little fists, and wanted nothing more than to find a hole to hide in. Meg bathed Amy, and then took a bath himself. Only then did he explain how to use the bathtub and tap to Barbara, whose face was still flushed red. He also gave her a new set of pajamas. Barbara glanced at the tap, and said nonchalantly, I know. It's just a pipe for water. Then go to bed early. Meg nodded. He turned and left the bathroom, closing the door behind him. Chapter 620. A princess of the Moon Nation fell from the sky. It looks like Mag Alex's speculations about the existence of moon beings in other realms were correct. There really are beings of other realms outside of the Norland continent. The upper limit of power on the Norland continent is the 10th tier. Even though there's a big gap between the top 10th tier and the average 10th tier, it's still within the 10th tier. So, have the extraterrestrials found a way to break through the 10th tier? Or is there a difference between their power system and the Norland continents? Barbara is already a 7th tier spatial magic caster at the age of 14. She's even more talented than Sally. Is she a prodigy, or is it because of the environment? Meg tucked Amy in before lying down on the bed with furrowed brows. He was searching for answers in Alex's memory. As a transmigrator, he felt a certain amount of pity for Barbara, but that wasn't a reason for him to take the risk of keeping a Chinibya girl at home. The most important thing was actually Barbara's identity as the princess of the Moon Nation. The people of the Norland continent had always been curious about whether there were people living on the moon, just like how there were all kinds of speculations and myths about the moon in ancient China. All of the most powerful beings on the continent were also looking at extraterrestrials. They wanted to know whether there was a way to improve their power beyond the thick miasma. Meg didn't really care whether there was an 11th tier superpower above the 10th tier. The most important thing for him at the moment was to recover his power as soon as possible. However, he had to keep Barbara by his side. If people with ulterior motives learned that she had come from extraterrestrials, they would go crazy. This was a very passive situation for Meg. Furthermore, Meg felt that Barbara did indeed have the potential to become an outstanding employee. Perhaps she would be able to take over most of Yabamiya's work in the near future. As for her personality, training was Meg's specialty. He was never worried that he couldn't even train a 14-year-old girl well. Unruly little princess, at least it's better to stay in the restaurant than to wander outside, Meg thought to himself. He shook his head with a smile and closed his eyes to sleep. When he woke up in the middle of the night, Meg saw that the door of the opposite room was open, and the lights in the bathroom and the room were on. He looked a little surprised and muttered, "Why aren't you sleeping so late?" Meg was about to ask when he reached the room's door, but he stopped himself. The autumn night was a bit chilly. Barbara was lying on a soft cushion in the corner of the room. She was curled up like a kitten in her pink pajamas. Her eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and her face was a bit sickly pale. She was using a wooden block as a pillow, and the wooden horse was right beside her legs. Meg stood at the door for a long time. He reached out to turn off the light, turned around, and stopped. After a while, he reached out to turn the light back on. He walked into his room and came out with a quilt and a soft pillow. Meg slowly pulled out the long wooden block under Barbara's head, put the soft pillow in it, and covered her with the soft quilt. Barbara moaned comfortably. Her furrowed eyebrows slowly relaxed, and she buried her head in the soft pillow. She opened her arms and hugged the warm quilt with a smile on her face. Being too soft-hearted is also a kind of illness. Meg sighed and shook his head with a smile. He turned around and walked to the door. He turned off the light and gently closed the door. The first ray of sunlight in the morning fell on the signboard of the Suede textile shop. A luxurious horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of the shop. Gloria lifted the hem of her dress and got off the carriage. She looked a bit tired, but her eyes were bright and full of energy. "Miss, after the tailors worked overnight, the first dress made according to your size has been completed. Would you like to try it on?" Mars opened the door and came out to greet her. His hair, which was usually neatly combed, was a little messy, and his stubble was a little long. There were also dark circles under his eyes, and he looked as if he hadn't slept for a few days. However, he was looking at Gloria with excitement in his eyes. "Thank you for your hard work. I'll try it on now." Gloria also had a pleasantly surprised smile on her face. She quickly followed Mars into the shop. Inside the fabric shop, two tailors were arranging a dark blue ceremonial robe that was hung on the wall. Two young workers were already asleep in a nearby chair. A female employee who had woken up early was yawning. When she saw Gloria come in, she immediately stood up straight. "Andre, Master Branch, thank you for your hard work." Gloria nodded at the two tailors as soon as she entered the shop. "You're too kind, Miss Gloria. We've already made this dress according to the blueprint you gave us. Please take a look and see if you're satisfied with it." Andre was wearing a long black robe with a long wooden ruler in his hand. Blanche was also looking at Gloria and the dress in front of her with anticipation in her eyes. Gloria didn't need to say anything. As soon as she entered the shop, her attention was drawn to the dress hanging in the center of the shop. The light blue backless gown was dotted with glittering gemstones, and the fishtail-like skirt looked very slender. It hung there as if it was glowing, gorgeous and elegant. What a beautiful dress! Gloria's breathing quickened. She had imagined what this dress would look like many times during the past few days, but when it was actually placed before her eyes, she was still pleasantly surprised. She loved dresses, especially after she recovered her looks. She would change into a new dress almost every day, and she wanted to wear all of the dresses that she had only seen in the past. This dress was the most beautiful one she had ever seen. The designer of this dress is a genius. Be it the overall design of the dress or the handling of the various details, they all show his genius in the design of dresses. I never thought that the effect of hanging so many pieces of gems on the dress would not be vulgar, but elegant. It's incredible. Andre said with some emotion. That's right. I've been making clothes for several decades, and I'm most proud of the dresses I've made. However, this dress is the most perfect and beautiful one I've ever made. Branch was appraising the dress with an intense gaze. He really is a genius. A smile appeared on Gloria's face. She made her way to the fitting room in the back as she said, "Put this dress on for me." Chapter 621. Miss Gloria. Andre looked at Gloria, who walked out of the fitting room after a long while, but he didn't know what to say. Blanche's expression was also rather disappointed. "The dress is very beautiful. It's the most beautiful dress I've ever worn, and the size is also perfect, so I want to save it for an important occasion." Gloria smiled at the two of them. Andre and Blanche's expressions eased slightly upon hearing this. They had worked together for 2 days and 1 night to create this dress, and they had initially thought that Gloria wouldn't like it, but it turned out that she wanted to wear it for an important occasion. As such, it was a tribute to their hard work during the past 2 days. "Master Andre, Master Blanche, I've mentioned to you that I want to create a batch of dresses according to size. Your abilities are unquestionable, so I'd like to hire you as the chief tailors of the Suede. You'll be responsible for leading the tailors to create as many of these 3 dresses as possible within 20 days. Gloria looked at the two of them and continued, "You only need to make 10 of these dresses, and each dress has to be made in a different material and color. As for the other 2 dresses, you can create dresses of different sizes using the same color." Well, Andre and Blanche were both hesitant. Both of them had their own tailor shops in the Aden Square. Even though they weren't top-notch tailors, they were still quite reputable. Although the title of the young mistress of the Moreton family shone brightly, they were still somewhat reluctant and hesitant to give up their own tailor shop and become a tailor who only made clothes according to other people's blueprints. After all, this young mistress had only recently appeared in the public eye. Geoffrey Moreton was renowned for his patriarchal tendencies, and if Cyril were the one who was speaking to them right now, then perhaps they would have agreed without any hesitation. "I'll pay you more than what you paid for your own shops. Also, I'm now a candidate to inherit family Moreton, so I'm on the same starting line as Cyril." Gloria looked at the two of them with a smile, and said, "As you know, the Moreton family has a very good tradition. We will reward those who help us handsomely after they become capable enough." Andre looked into Gloria's eyes, and finally nodded as he said, "Miss Hill of the Buffett family Moreton has already become the true leader of the Buffett family, so who can say that you won't be the next leader of family Moreton? I agree to work for the Suede." Blanche looked at Andre, and hesitated momentarily before also nodding. "I also agree to work for the Suede textile shop." Gloria nodded with a smile, and said, "Then I'll have to trouble the two of you. If you have any juniors or close friends, you can also recommend them to Blue Suede as long as they have solid abilities." Mars stood to the side without saying a word. He looked at Gloria and nodded slightly, and he couldn't hide the gratification in his eyes. Gloria, Andre, and Blanche discussed the quantity and size of the 3 dresses for a while, and then Andre and Blanche went to rest. They were ready to throw themselves into an even bigger workload. "Miss, there are 2 things I need to tell you," Mars said to Gloria in the small office. The Blue Suede textile shop's inventory has basically been cleared out. Due to the fact that it's in good condition, most of the fabrics won't be affected, so we won't have to worry about the source and cost of the fabrics for a very long time. The second thing is that in 3 days, the Aden Chamber of Commerce will be holding a mid-year banquet, and at that time, other than Mars explained clearly. "Mars, thank you for your hard work." Gloria looked at Mars gratefully. She thought for a moment and said, "I'll be attending the banquet in 3 days. This is a very important opportunity for our Suede. After that, I'm going to change the name of the Suede textile shop to Suede. I want the shop's name to be engraved in a youthful font. I'm going to take a trip back to the Moreton Manor now, and I'll ask Grandfather to give the shop to me. Miss, I believe in your judgment and choice." Mars lowered his head in a humble manner. "Grandfather, that's all I want. If I can turn the losses of the Suede textile shop into a profit within a month, then the shop will belong to me. If I fail, then I'll voluntarily give up the opportunity to become Grandfather's successor." Gloria looked at Geoffrey with a serious expression as they stood in a dome-shaped pavilion in the Moreton Manor. "You're that confident?" Geoffrey asked calmly as he walked around the pavilion with a small sprinkler in his hand. He was sprinkling water on the flowers and plants around the pavilion. "If I can't even run a textile shop to the best of my ability, then what right do I have to compete for the position of the head of family Moreton?" Gloria retorted. Geoffrey stopped and looked at Gloria's unflinching gaze. He smiled and said, "I can agree to your request. This VAM agreement will be implemented from now on." Sunlight shone through the window onto the floor and onto Barbara's face, who was buried in a soft pillow and blanket. Barbara stretched comfortably, and slowly opened her eyes, only to be met with the head of a wooden horse. She was stunned for a moment, and then lowered her head to look at the blanket covering her body, the pillow under her head, and the room that was filled with all kinds of toys. So, what happened yesterday wasn't a dream. Barbara was slightly disappointed. She looked at the blanket, which still smelled like fresh sunshine, and the pillow, which was so soft that she felt like she could sink her head into it. These things weren't there when she fell asleep yesterday. "Don't tell me, that guy came into my room in the middle of the night. He even changed my pillow and blanket." Barbara's face was filled with shame and anger. No man had ever seen her sleeping like this. "But, this blanket and pillow are so warm. It's so comfortable." Barbara hugged the blanket tightly and muttered to herself. She couldn't struggle at all. "All right, seeing that you're a good person, I won't argue with you about this matter." Barbara let go of her hands and stayed in the warm blanket for a while before getting up. "Maybe I could try on my new clothes." Barbara's gaze turned to the black box on the small table. Chapter 622. It was a new day. Meg's main task was to teach Barbara how to do her job. Of course, he left it to Yabamiya. Yabamiya, who was usually gentle and easy to talk to, was very meticulous when it came to work. There was no room for negotiation or slacking off. She had taught Barbara well. Yabamiya looked at Barbara with a serious expression and said, "Barbara, even though your magic can serve dishes quickly and accurately, you have to ensure that the dishes remain stable in midair. Otherwise, you won't be able to ensure that the dishes will remain on the table. That's the most important thing during the serving process." But the fried rice only spread out a little that night. Barbara pouted, feeling wronged. Our boss made the most delicious Yangzhou fried rice. Shouldn't we do the same and make our service worthy of such delicious food? Besides, this is just fried rice. If it's braised chicken and rice with gravy, thick chicken broth will spill out. It's not a good dining experience for the customers, Yabamiya said, shaking her head. Barbara looked at Yabamiya, then at the customers who were enjoying the food in the restaurant. She nodded thoughtfully and said, "I understand. Keep it up. You're already very good. I wasn't as efficient as you when I was young. You'll definitely become an excellent waitress," Yabamiya said with an encouraging smile. "There's no doubt about it." Barbara raised her chin proudly. Her fighting spirit was reignited. She thought to herself, even though it's just a simple dish, it requires more skill and concentration than I thought. However, this kind of small thing is not a problem for me at all. Your Yangzhou fried rice, please enjoy. Your laoji rujiamo, please enjoy. Your braised chicken and rice, please enjoy. Barbara's voice rang out in the restaurant from time to time. Dishes flew out of the kitchen and landed steadily in front of the customers. The bowls almost didn't make a sound when they hit the table. The rice and chicken in the bowls were still perfectly arranged. Even the chicken broth didn't ripple at all. "Wow, mother, look. That plate can fly by itself." A little boy's eyes widened when he saw a plate of Yangzhou fried rice land in front of him. Amazing. This new waiter is actually a spatial magic caster. His precise control is simply incredible. A magic caster from the Great Temple exclaimed in admiration. "This is the first time I've seen a dish being served using spatial magic." As expected, Boss Mag has always been at the forefront. He doesn't give those who want to imitate him a chance at all. George sighed with emotion. Barbara maintained her noble and elegant expression, but the slight curl of her lips and the unconcealable smile in her eyes exposed her inner feelings. "It's better than I thought, but remembering the order of the dishes is still a big problem for Barbara. Although memory can be cultivated, talent is the main factor." Mag was also pleasantly surprised to see Barbara using spatial magic to serve the dishes to the customers. He then asked internally, "System, can you develop an AI ordering system for me? That is, an order list will be automatically formed after the customers place their orders. It would be best if it could be captured automatically by voice, without any additional input." "No." The system's calm voice sounded. "Isn't this a basic operation? You can even make airplanes, but you can't make a system like this." Meg raised his eyebrows. "I can write a system like this in 5 seconds, the system said proudly. "Alright, name your price." Meg rolled his eyes. "I'm sorry, but you don't have enough privileges to use the intelligent ordering system. Please upgrade the restaurant to level 3 as soon as possible. While unlocking the intelligent ordering system, you will also unlock more privileges, expand the restaurant's scale, and strengthen the restaurant's protective shield. At the same time, there will be more rewards waiting for you." The system's excited voice sounded. "What are the requirements for upgrading to level 3? Meg asked with furrowed brows. Upgrading to level 3 requires 150,000 points. After each upgrade, the points spent will be deducted. Good luck, host, the system replied. It's that expensive. I have to spend at least 15 million copper coins to upgrade, and that's not including the cost of ingredients. Meg's brows furrowed. Although he had already expected this, his eyelids still twitched. Money wasn't that easy to earn. The system didn't say anything, and directly ignored Meg's protest. Looks like I'll have to open the ice cream shop as soon as possible. That way, I'll at least be able to generate some income on top of the restaurant's current revenue. Meg thought to himself. It had been 2 days since the system issued the mission, so the ice cream shop had to open tomorrow. After the morning service ended, Barbara was so tired that she sat down on a chair at the side and laid her head on the table with a look of despair. She had been concentrating on controlling her spatial magic for more than an hour. Although she had only been moving some light plates, she had still expended a lot of her mental strength to ensure that every dish remained the same during the process of being served. Of course, to her, the biggest drain was that she had been standing for more than an hour. Her legs didn't even feel like they belonged to her anymore. Barbara, you did well this morning, Meg said to Barbara as he took off his apron and set it aside. Of course, Barbara said proudly, a happy smile appearing on her tired face. Mia, the renovation of the ice cream shop is almost complete. After Amy's closes tomorrow morning, the ice cream shop will officially open. We'll all be there to help you, Meg said to Yabamiya, who was helping to clean up the tableware. So soon. Yabamiya faltered slightly as she looked at Meg in surprise. Yes, the scale of the ice cream shop is relatively limited. If you only sell ice cream, the requirements will be lower. Don't be too nervous, you'll definitely be able to do a good job, Meg encouraged in a gentle voice. All right, I'll do my best. Yabamiya nodded with a serious expression. Excuse me, is Mr. Meg in? Right at this moment, a knock sounded from outside the door. Meg opened the door, and a middle-aged man in a long robe who was dressed like a butler stood at the door. He looked at him with a smile, and said, "You must be Mr. Meg." "Yes, and you are." Meg nodded. Chapter 623. The Aiden Chamber of Commerce Banquet? Meg glanced at the gold-stamped invitation, but didn't take it. Instead, he turned to Poka with a perplexed look, and asked, "My restaurant isn't a member of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce. Why would Miss Hill invite me to this banquet?" "Miss Hill said that your restaurant is the best restaurant in the Aiden Square, and that it would be an honor for you to attend as a guest." Poka looked at Meg with a smile, and said, "Also, Miss Hill said that she wants to talk to Mr. Meg about something. She's very busy, so this is a good opportunity to talk to you. As one of the founding families of the Aiden Chamber of Commerce, Miss Hill has the right to invite some guests to the banquet." "Oh, right, the guests are you and your daughter," Bor added as he looked at Meg, who was still in deep thought. "All right, please tell Miss Hill that we'll be there." Meg accepted the invitation with a smile. "All right, I'm sure Miss Hill will be happy to hear this news." Poka nodded with a smile, and turned to board a horse-drawn carriage, which quickly drove away. Since this group of people is against the half-breeds, it's better to tear them apart in front of them instead of hiding. Meg looked at the invitation in his hand, and a smile appeared on his face. Besides, he really did want to talk to Miss Hill. "I'm going out for a while." Meg put the invitation behind the counter, and went upstairs to grab a folder. He said goodbye to Mia and the others, and then left. In the blacksmith's shop, Mabai looked at the blueprints on the table, and looked up at Meg, and asked, "Mr. Mac, this thing looks a little complicated. What is it used for?" "This is a steam engine, a machine that can convert energy," Meg said with a smile. "Energy conversion." Mabai looked at Meg in confusion. This is a little complicated to explain. To put it simply, after burning a piece of coal, it can pull a car to run. This is the conversion of energy, Meg explained. This. How can a piece of coal pull up a car? Mabai stared. The key to all of this lies in this steam engine. Meg pointed at the blueprint on the table and looked at Mabai with a smile. Mr. Mabai, I would like to ask you to make these parts according to the dimensions on the blueprint. After that, I will provide you with a blueprint for the cannon. It should be feasible. Mr. Mack, do you know how to make a cannon? Mabai's eyes lit up. It can only be considered an idea, but it should be feasible. Meg nodded. Okay, I will make these parts for you as soon as possible. Mabai nodded. Meg nodded slightly and said, I hope you can keep this a secret. In the future, I will cooperate with you in this area. The remuneration will definitely be higher than the weapon you are making now. Hey, Mr. Mack, there is no need to talk about this between us. Mabai waved his hand and smiled. I will make all the parts for you in 5 days. Thank you. Meg smiled and nodded. After leaving Mabai's blacksmith shop, he changed his clothes 3 times and ordered parts from 3 different blacksmith shops. The world's first small steam engine will be out soon. After changing into his clothes, Meg rode his bicycle back to the restaurant. Money was not easy to earn, so Meg planned to do a side business that could make a lot of money. In any world, energy that could be widely used would be a huge cake of wealth. Meg was going to be the one to cut the cake. On the 2nd floor of the magic potion shop, a large room had been transformed into a magic room. Black magic stones that could absorb magic attacks were stuck on the wall, and there were toys such as wooden horses in the corner. Master Julian, what magic are we learning today? Amy, who was wearing a little mage robe, looked up and asked curiously. Today, we are learning illusion magic, Julian said with a smile. Illusion magic. Amy was a little puzzled. Yes, any magic that takes the form of a physical object actually starts from illusion magic. For example, the Ice Blast WIRM that I once summoned had to use illusion magic to change the shape of the Ice Blast WIRM before I could control the Ice Blast WIRM in battle. Therefore, illusion magic is a very important basic magic among intermediate magic, Julian explained with a smile. Frost Dragon. Amy's eyes lit up, and she asked happily, then, what do I have to do? Now, little Amy, close your eyes and focus on the thing that you think is the most powerful in your mind, such as the Frost Dragon. Then, silently recite the spell I just taught you and try to make that thing appear, Julian said. Okay, Amy answered obediently and closed her eyes. The expression on her little face was very serious. What kind of thing will this little guy conjure up in his first illusion meditation? Julian stood to the side and looked at Amy expectantly. The things that appeared during the first illusion meditation, as well as the speed, could basically determine a magician's talent. The faster the speed, the more complicated the things that appeared, and naturally, the higher the talent. Soon, a light purple cloud appeared above Amy's head, and then quickly rolled and changed. Little girl, what will you make with your first illusion meditation? Julian stood to the side and looked at Amy expectantly. The things that appeared during the first illusion meditation, as well as the speed, could basically determine a magician's talent. The faster the speed, the more complicated the things that appeared, and naturally, the higher the talent. What is this thing? Julian's expression was a little strange. The fact that the cloud was rolling quickly on her first illusion practice was enough to prove that Amy's talent was very strong. However, looking at the cloud, it didn't look like a frost dragon at all. Instead, it looked more like a human. Okay. A minute later, Amy opened her eyes and looked up at the figure floating above her head. She clapped her little hands happily and said, Father. Father. Urian cleared his throat with a dark expression and said, "Ahem. Little Amy, I'm asking you to conjure up the most powerful being in your mind. Why are you conjuring up your father?" The thing floating above Amy's head was Meg, who was wearing a chef's uniform and holding a large kitchen knife in his hand. He looked quite majestic. This was the first time he had seen a magician conjure a person during their first illusion meditation practice. If this spread, he would probably become famous as well. "Yes, Father is the most powerful thing in my heart." Amy nodded matter-of-factly. Chapter 624. The ice cream shop is going to open tomorrow. Will I really be able to do it alone? Ah. I'm so nervous. But boss trusts me so much, I have to do a good job. Yabamiya murmured to herself in a dark alleyway. Her face was filled with nervousness and anticipation. She had to pass through this alleyway on her way home. It was pitch black at night, and the houses on either side of the alleyway were so close together that even the moonlight couldn't shine into the alleyway. The alleyway was dark and quiet, giving it an eerie feel. Her leather shoes made a soft sound as she stepped on the ground, and it was particularly clear in this alleyway. All of a sudden, a soft thump sounded from the courtyard beside her, as if something had fallen to the ground. Yabamiya was given a fright. "What's that?" Yabamiya leaned against the wall and listened carefully, but the sound in the courtyard had disappeared again. It must be a mouse or a cat that knocked over the jar. Yabamiya tried to console herself, and her expression relaxed slightly. However, her footsteps quickened, and her fists were clenched unconsciously. The sound of footsteps quickened in the alleyway. Yabamiya was still the only one in the alleyway under the moonlight, but she felt as if there were a pair of eyes staring at her from the darkness. She thought of the stories about the night that the female workers told her in their free time when she was working in the restaurant. Chaos City was a city of order, and the Great Temple and the City Lord's castle controlled most of the places. However, there were still many places where the light couldn't reach, and there were still some perverts lurking in those places. To a lone woman, they were very dangerous. The sound of footsteps sounded behind her. They weren't very loud, but they were very fast, and it seemed that something was speeding up in pursuit. She could even hear heavy panting, as if it were a wild beast. Yabamiya felt her heart rate accelerate, and her footsteps quickened. She was already jogging. The alleyway that she thought to be just an ordinary alleyway now seemed extraordinarily long, and she was still quite a distance away from where she lived. Suddenly, a muffled sound came from behind. The sound of footsteps disappeared, and all sound disappeared. The alleyway returned to silence. Only Yabamiya's hurried footsteps could be heard. Yabamiya's footsteps didn't slow down. He picked up a thick wooden stick from the side of the alley. Holding it in his hand, he felt a sense of security. He felt that the stick in his hand could smash the heads of all perverts. A beam of moonlight shone on the entrance of the alley not far away. It was like a torch suddenly lit up in the endless darkness. Yabamiya's eyes lit up. As long as they left the alley, the outside would be spacious and bright. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the entrance of the alley, blocking the moonlight. "Ah!" Yabamiya screamed and closed her eyes. She raised the wooden stick in her hands and swung it at the figure that had suddenly appeared. Crack! The wooden stick that was as thick as a child's arm broke. Yabamiya's eyes were closed, and he was still holding the half-broken wooden stick in his hand. Are you all right?" A cold voice asked. There was a hint of confusion and concern in her voice. Yabamiya was stunned and opened her eyes. Standing in front of her wasn't a naked pervert or a burly man as she had expected. Instead, it was Elizabeth, who was dressed in white. Her silver-white dress shimmered under the moonlight. Although she was backlit, her cold and beautiful face could still be seen. However, she was holding her left hand in front of her, and there was a half-broken wooden stick on the ground. "Ah! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you. I thought. Yabamiya looked at Elizabeth and apologized. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know it was you. I thought. Elizabeth looked at Yabamiya, lowered her hand, and took a step forward. Yabamiya instinctively took 2 steps back and pressed her back against the wall behind her. She looked at Elizabeth apologetically, but at the same time, she was a little scared, and didn't dare to make a sound. Elizabeth frowned and took another step forward. There was less than half a meter between the two of them. I. Yabamiya clenched her little fists and raised them in front of her chest as she looked at Elizabeth. Elizabeth's cold aura surged toward her, and she was a little intimidated by the aloof temperament on Elizabeth's beautiful face. However, there was also a peculiar aura that made her want to approach her. It was just like the aura she had felt when she handed the mooncake to Elizabeth on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was mysterious and magical. "Look at me." Elizabeth stopped in her tracks and said coldly. Yabamiya looked up at Elizabeth with an apologetic expression. She didn't think that Elizabeth would suddenly appear in the darkness. "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. If I hurt you, then you can hit me back." "All right." Elizabeth nodded before reaching out to touch Yabamiya's finger. Yabamiya withdrew her finger as if she had been electrocuted. The tip of her middle finger was a little cold, and she could feel a stinging sensation, as if she had been pricked by a very small needle. However, the sensation was very faint, and there was no blood flowing from her finger either. "I took a drop of your blood." Elizabeth withdrew her hand, and a small vial that had been constructed from ice appeared in her hand. There was a drop of golden blood in the vial. "Why do you want my blood?" Yabamiya looked at Elizabeth with a perplexed expression. The last time she had stopped her and Sally, she had said that she wanted a drop of her blood, but Sally had turned her down. She didn't think that she would appear again for a drop of her blood. "I have my own uses for it." Elizabeth put away the vial, but didn't offer any explanation. "All right." Yabamiya was a little disappointed. However, she looked at Elizabeth with a curious expression, and asked, "You're a frost dragon, so you must be able to fly, right? It must feel amazing to fly in the sky, right?" Elizabeth looked at Yabamiya's expectant expression, and was silent for a moment before asking, "Do you want to give it a try?" "Ha!" Yabamiya faltered momentarily, and before she had a chance to react, Elizabeth had already wrapped an arm around her waist. A silver spell formation appeared on the ground, and they disappeared into the alleyway in the blink of an eye. Yabamiya closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was already in the air outside Chaos City. Her feet were suspended in mid-air, and she abruptly plummeted downward. Yabamiya was only halfway through her shriek when a frost dragon appeared below her. She just so happened to land on the dragon's back. She hurriedly reached out to grab a protruding scale, and flew up into the sky. The wind whistled past her ears, and the giant dragon pierced through the clouds. A brand new starry sky appeared, and the moon and stars became brighter and clearer. A brand new world appeared before Yabamiya. Chapter 625. Perhaps you can become a giant dragon in the future and roam the skies. You won't have to bow and scrape to serve humans and become a ruler. The two of them returned to the alleyway, and Elizabeth looked at Yabamiya with a calm expression. "Thank you for taking me up into the sky. This is the first time I've seen the scenery in the sky. The stars and the moon can be so clear and bright, and the mountains on the ground look so tiny in the sky. The feeling of flying with the wind is so wonderful." Yabamiya was unable to conceal her excitement. However, Yabamiya quickly shook her head with a smile, and said, "But I don't want to become a ruler. I like being a waitress. Besides, waitresses don't have to bow and scrape. We're equal to our customers, and they respond to our smiles and service with affirmation." Elizabeth looked at the sincere smile on Yabamiya's face, and fell silent for a moment before nodding. "Whatever you like. Try to choose a more spacious path home in the future." Elizabeth disappeared on the spot as soon as her voice trailed off. "Thank you." Yabamiya looked at the empty space for a long while before turning around and continuing to walk home with a smile on her face. It was as if she was no longer nervous about the next day. The Golden Dragon tribe has already begun to select a new candidate for the tribe leader, but if she really is that person, then there's no way she'll become the tribe leader candidate. Elizabeth stood on a large tree and looked at Yabamiya in the distance as she entered a small building. A gentle smile appeared on Elizabeth's face as she recalled the way this little girl had screamed on top of her. "I wonder if the ice cream shop's business will be able to match Mamie Restaurant's popularity. Even if it can't, it should still be able to generate a sizable income, right?" Mag lay on his bed, and thought about the opening ceremony every day with a hint of anticipation and nervousness in his heart. "Father. Change, change, change." Amy, who had already fallen asleep, mumbled to herself as she waved her little hands in the air. Soon, she fell silent again. What kind of dream is this little girl having? Meg looked at the small bed with an amused expression before shaking his head with a smile and closing his eyes to sleep. Mr. Meg has agreed to attend the banquet in 3 days. In a brightly lit accounting room of the Buffett Manor, Polka whispered to Hill, who was looking down at the account book. "Very good." Hill nodded and continued to flip through the account book in his hands. Polka hesitated for a moment before asking, "Young mistress, I don't understand. Mr. Meg's restaurant is quite famous in the Aden Square, but he hasn't joined the Aden Chamber of Commerce yet. Also, the scale of his restaurant is limited, so it won't have any impact on the preliminaries in a month. Why do you care so much about him?" Hill put down the account book in his hands, and said, "If you only look at the information on the surface, Mr. Meg and his subordinates are indeed not worth my time. There are many restaurants of such scale in the Aden Square, and the food and beverage industry is just a small area for the Aden Chamber of Commerce." Hill looked at Polka and asked, "However, if this restaurant successfully mediated the war between the demons and giant dragons, and attracted more than 4 great magic casters to dine here, and became the restaurant most frequently mentioned by the rich ladies in Chaos City, and the owner's daughter became the disciple of 2 great magic casters, and changed the dining habits of countless people, how many restaurants can you find in Chaos City like this?" Polka couldn't hide the surprise on her face. She shook her head, and said, "If Mr. Meg really did this, you won't be able to find another restaurant like this in Chaos City. So, now it's not about whether he can join the Aden Chamber of Commerce, but whether he's willing to join. The Gourmet section of the Aden Chamber of Commerce's income doesn't make up much of it, but almost all of it is under the control of family Moreton. If Mamie Restaurant can topple Dukas Restaurant, then that piece of the pie could very well become ours. This is going to be extremely important for the midterm and year-end elections." Shear nodded before picking up the ledger and continuing to read through it. "Miss, there's one more thing." Polka continued, "According to our ranking, in the midterm elections in a month's time, the number of votes we can get is almost half of what the Aden Chamber of Commerce's votes. After more than 20 years of operation by Jeffrey, the merchants in the Aden Chamber of Commerce are very supportive of him. It's very difficult for us to get the upper hand in the votes. This is within my expectations. At least it's much better than when the Marquis family didn't even get 1/10 of the votes." Hill smiled, and waved the account book in his hand, and said, "But we've borrowed a lot of money over the years. If they can't pay us back, they should at least do something, right?" Master, the preparations for the midterm elections have already begun. The Buffett family has been making a lot of moves during this time. Many of their members have told us that they're canvassing for votes, but we still have a huge advantage in the votes. In the Moreton Manor, in a brightly lit room, the Aden Chamber of Commerce's secretary, Menard, looked at Geoffrey respectfully. In less than a month, that little girl from the Buffett family has taken 1/3 of the votes. Compared to the two good-for-nothings from the Marquis family, she's much more capable. Geoffrey gently placed the account book in his hand on the table, and fell into deep thought. Menard stood quietly to the side. No matter what, Geoffrey didn't need to ask for the opinions of others. Chapter 626. Meg sat up on the bed. Sitting opposite him was a man who looked exactly like him, also wearing a big bear pajamas. The two of them stared at each other. It was as if they were carved from the same mold. If he hadn't just woken up, Meg would have thought that he was still dreaming. Meow, meow, ugly duckling lay on the edge of the bed, turning its head left and right in confusion. He, Amy looked at Meg and laughed happily. Amy, this is. Meg looked at Amy. The little one's expression said everything. However, the person in front of him looked so much like him that he almost couldn't tell the difference. He didn't know how Amy did it. Father, this is a new spell I learned. Amy waved her little hand, and it passed through someone's body. She continued with a smile, look, this is fake, but it looks like it's real. Master Julian told me to create the most powerful thing, so I created Father. And I can change into other clothes. Meg looked at the person in front of him who was changing into a chef's suit, a black casual outfit, and a skirt. He quickly raised his hand to stop him. Okay, Father saw it. It's really powerful. The only person who could make miraculous warmth out of illusion magic was probably his daughter. However, he refused to try cross-dressing, even if it was just an illusion. Father, you think it's powerful too, right? Amy's eyes lit up. She looked at Meg and said hesitantly, but Master Julian said it's best not to create you in battle. I think Master Julian's words are quite reasonable. Meg nodded in agreement. This little fellow's idea was very dangerous. When other magicians fought, dragons and phoenixes would fly everywhere. When it came to her, what was the point of conjuring a human? Did she want him to chase after a dragon with a kitchen knife in his hand? This scene. Just thinking about it made Meg's eyes burn. Was there a magic caster who played with magic like this? Well, Father, are you not willing to fight for Amy? However, in my heart, Father is the most powerful and powerful person. Amy pursed her lips and lowered her eyes with an aggrieved expression. Okay. Xiaomi can use whatever she wants. I don't think there's any problem. Meg looked at Amy's aggrieved expression and felt his heart melt. There was only one thought in his mind, promise her. Promise her. This pitiful appearance, there was no way to stop it. Really, meow. Amy's eyes lit up again, and she looked at Meg with her big, bright eyes. Of course. Meg nodded seriously. Looking at the illusion holding a kitchen knife in its hand, he suggested, however, I think maybe we can replace his kitchen knife with a long sword or something and put on some armor. That would make him look more impressive. There was no way to change the fact that he was going to fight, but at the very least, he had to change his handsome appearance. What was the big deal about carrying a kitchen knife? No, I don't. Amy shook her head like a rattled drum and earnestly said, I think Father looks the most impressive in this outfit. That kitchen knife can make all kinds of delicious food. I love Father like this the most. As long as you're happy. Meg covered his face. Forget it, for the sake of his daughter's happiness, he didn't care about his pride. Okay. Amy jumped on the bed happily. Ugly Duckling, which had just crawled halfway up the bed, was bounced off again. It rolled twice on the carpet and looked up at Amy with a pitiful expression. Ugly Duckling, do you have something against me? Amy looked at Ugly Duckling and asked in a dangerous tone. Meow. Ugly Duckling got up from the ground and shook its head eagerly. All right, since you woke up early today, then get up early. Meg took a look at the alarm clock beside the bed. It was exactly 5:00. He stroked Amy's hair with a smile and got up to help her change her clothes. After washing up, Amy looked at the closed door and quietly asked, Big Sister Barbara is sleeping in. Should I go and wake her up? Let her sleep a little longer. There's still some time before she has to go to work. Meg shook his head with a smile. He walked downstairs and began to prepare the ingredients for the morning. Ugly Duckling, I have a big treasure to show you. Amy squatted down in front of Ugly Duckling with her little hands behind her back, and looked at Ugly Duckling mysteriously. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling's eyes widened, and it jumped from side to side as it looked at Amy's hands with anticipation. Look. Amy held her hands in front of her, and Ugly Duckling leaned forward to sniff it. It then took 2 steps back, as if it were about to pounce. Whoosh! Amy immediately let go of her hands, and a colorful little bird flew out of her hands, right next to Ugly Duckling's nose. Ugly Duckling was just about to jump up, but its reaction was delayed for a few seconds before it fell back onto the ground. It lay on the ground with wide eyes as it stared at the little bird flying around in the restaurant. It was stunned for a moment before it got up again, and chased after the little bird all over the restaurant. Go, Ugly Duckling! Amy yelled with elation, and her bell-like laughter reverberated throughout the restaurant. A little bird. Just as Amy and Ugly Duckling were having a good time, Bobla came down from upstairs, and saw a colorful bird flying toward her. She hesitated momentarily before using spatial magic to confine it, preparing to release it outside. PFFF, however, the constricted little bird struggled a few times before disappearing into a cloud of purple mist. An illusion. A hint of surprise appeared on Barbara's face. She had just woken up and was a little groggy, but the little bird was extremely lifelike, and its magic fluctuations were extremely weak. Chapter 627. Have you heard? Mr. Mac is going to open a new shop. A new shop. A new restaurant. What's it called? Looks like we won't have to line up so much in the future. It's an ice cream shop. Apparently, they only sell ice cream, so we still have to come to Mamie's to eat. Ice cream is not bad either. I really like it. I have to line up for an hour every time just to eat an ice cream. Mr. Mac finally understands how hard it is for us. By the way, what's the name of the ice cream shop? An ice cream shop. I know it's an ice cream shop. I'm asking what the name of the ice cream shop is. An ice cream shop. Hey, you, I told you, the name of the ice cream shop is an ice cream shop. If you ask me again, I'll kill myself. At the entrance of the restaurant, news of Mamie's opening a new branch had already spread among the customers. Even though it was just an ice cream shop, it still created quite a stir among the customers. For customers who love to eat ice cream, this was very good news. As soon as they entered the restaurant, Yabamiya turned to Meg with an excited expression, and asked, Boss, we passed by Ricky's rotisserie on our way here today, and we saw a large piece of red cloth draped over it. That's the ice cream shop, right? That's right. After business ends this morning, there'll be an unveiling ceremony, and the ice cream shop will officially open for business. Meg smiled. He had asked the system to remove the concealment and cover the shop with a red cloth to maintain a sense of mystery before the official opening. So many customers are talking about the ice cream shop. Business should be very good on the first day of business. Let's help you out first. Sally also had a smile on her face. Yes, yes. If you're all here, then there won't be any problems. Yaba Mia nodded with a wide smile on her face. Big Sister Mia, it's a pity that I have to go to Teacher Julian's place for a lesson this morning, so I won't be able to see your ice cream shop open for business, Amy said with a wistful expression. I can eat a few more ice creams for you, Mia said with a smile as she stroked Amy's hair. Actually, you can leave it for me to eat after school. I can finish it all myself. I don't need you to replace me. I'll feel bad about it, Amy said seriously as she looked at Yaba Mia. If you're the manager, you'll have to manage a restaurant by yourself, right? Amazing. Barbara looked at Yaba Mia with admiration. Even a simple task made her feel a little powerless, not to mention taking on all the responsibilities by herself. After the morning service, Meg sent off the last batch of customers. He took off his apron and led Yaba Mia and the others to the ice cream shop. There were already quite a few people standing at the entrance of the ice cream shop. They were all standing on their tiptoes, curious as to what was hidden under the red cloth. Mr. Mac is here. Someone shouted, and the crowd suddenly became restless. They all looked at Meg. So many people. A hint of nervousness appeared on Yaba Mia's face. She had thought that there wouldn't be many customers when the restaurant first opened, but there were already so many people, and most of them were Mamie restaurant's regulars. Don't be nervous. There will only be more customers in the future, Meg said with a smile. He was quite satisfied with the popularity. Yaba Mia nodded. He looked at Meg, and suddenly felt a lot less nervous. He also looked at the ice cream shop covered by the red cloth. Meg was the only one who knew what the ice cream shop looked like. After seeing Amy's, many people were looking forward to it. Harrison looked at Mag with a smile, and said, Boss Mag, you're exploiting her. Young Mistress Mia still wants to open an ice cream shop after finishing her work at the restaurant. Isn't that a little too cruel? Mag's regulars burst into laughter. It's called Capable People Do More Work. I know you're envious, Meg replied with a smile. Of course I'm envious. Who would be as lucky as Mr. Mac to find 3 outstanding and beautiful waitresses? Harrison nodded, and then said, but you should hurry up and open the ice cream shop. We've been waiting for a long time. After eating the ice cream, we still have work to do. Yeah, hurry up and open. The crowd also joined in the commotion. Thank you for your support. Meg nodded slightly at the customers. Standing in front of the ice cream shop, he reached out and grabbed a corner of the red cloth. He turned to look at Yaba Mia and said, Manager Yaba Mia, let's open the ice cream shop together. Oh, okay. Yaba Mia hurriedly nodded. He quickly stepped forward and reached out to grab a corner of the red cloth. 3, 2, 1, amidst the cheers, the red cloth was pulled down. A Snow Queen-themed ice cream shop with ice blue and white as its main color scheme appeared before everyone's eyes. Snowflakes slowly drifted down between the 2-story floor-to-ceiling windows. And Snow Queen in a blue and silver dress with a crown on her head stood in the middle of the ice cream shop. Snowflakes revolved around her, and the entire ice cream shop was like a palace situated in a snowy mountain. It was grand and exquisite, and it was a sight to behold. The words "an ice cream shop" were written in silver and ice blue. The font was cute, and there was an image of a snow fairy at the end. A refreshing feeling of coldness washed over them, as if they had suddenly been placed in a world of ice and snow. They couldn't help but want to go in and take a look. It's so beautiful. I feel like it's even prettier than Mamie's. Mamie's is more mature, and this ice cream shop is more refreshing and cute. I think they both have their own merits. Snow Queen. Boss Mag really is Boss Mag. He's only a branch, but he's already able to create such a stunning scene. Everything else is fine, but the name of the shop. Isn't it a little too casual? The customers looked at the brand new ice cream shop and began to discuss spiritedly among themselves. Meg didn't pay attention to their discussion. For someone who was terrible at naming, a Buddhist name was undoubtedly a good choice. Meg felt that if he were to open other branches in the future, perhaps he could come up with a series of names. For example, a barbecue shop, a milk tea shop, a braised chicken shop. System, little Amy's drawing is very lively. Meg's gaze fell on the snow fairy at the end of the signboard. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that it was actually the image of Amy's back. If the host is satisfied, you can add more money. The system's happy voice sounded. Don't even think about adding more money. Meg refused without any hesitation. He had no intention of negotiating. Chapter 628. What a beautiful ice cream shop. It's like an ancient ice castle. Have I really become the manager of such an ice cream shop? Yabamiya stared at the ice cream shop in amazement. Her face was filled with joy and disbelief, and she had forgotten to let go of the red cloth in her hand. Congratulations, Mia. Sally looked at Mia with a smile, and her eyes were filled with encouragement. Congratulations on becoming the store manager, Sister Mia. Barbara also smiled. Her eyes widened as she stared at the ice cream shop. She muttered to herself excitedly, "What a beautiful ice cream shop. Are those snowflakes falling from the sky?" Those are snowflakes that only exist in ancient legends. White hexagonal petals falling from the sky and accumulating on the ground. It looks so fun. Thank you, everyone. Yabamiya nodded with a radiant smile on her face. After pushing open the glass door, a cool breeze blew in their faces. The dryness of autumn was instantly dispelled, and they felt as if they were embracing winter. Meg walked into the restaurant first. There were 3 automatic ice cream machines in the semi-open kitchen, and it wouldn't be crowded even if 3 people stood in the kitchen. The cashier counter was next to the kitchen, and there were 4 flavors of ice cream and their prices written on the back of the counter. There was also a large amount of empty space. The statue of the Ice Queen was in the center of the restaurant. Compared to the plastic wax figures in his previous life, this one was much more intricate. Even the fingerprints on her fingers could be seen clearly. Furthermore, it wasn't a fixed statue. Instead, it would move up and down every once in a while, giving it a more spiritual appearance. Aside from that, the tables in the restaurant were all small square tables, and there were only 2 tall stools placed on each table. Sitting beside the floor-to-ceiling glass and quietly eating delicious Häagen-Dazs, one could immediately feel the atmosphere of a small bourgeoisie. Meg nodded slightly. He was quite satisfied with the system's renovation. "Boss, what should I do now?" Yabamiya looked at the customers swarming into the restaurant, and she asked Meg in a low voice with a hint of nervousness and helplessness in her eyes. "Since it's open for business, of course it's open for business. There are so many customers as soon as we open for business. It's so much better than when I first opened," Meg said with a smile. The little girl was still too nervous. "Oh." Yabamiya hurriedly nodded before quickly making her way into the kitchen. She quickly turned on the 3 ice cream machines and preheated them before turning to the customers with a smile as she asked, "Welcome, what kind of ice cream would you like to order?" "I want a matcha-flavored ice cream." "I want a chocolate ice cream." The customers began to order, spontaneously lining up in front of the counter. "All right. A matcha-flavored ice cream will be 300 copper coins in total. After you order, please pay the bill and come back with your ticket to receive your ice cream." Yabamiya said with a smile. He tore a receipt with a serial number 1 from a small book and handed it to the customer. Do you want to pay the bill first? The customer was stunned for a moment. He looked at the receipt in his hand. This was the first time he had heard of such a rule. Yes. Yabamiya nodded with a smile, but she was feeling a little nervous. When she heard about this new ordering method from Meg yesterday, she was a little worried that the customers wouldn't be able to accept it. After all, in other restaurants, customers had to be served well. Not to mention letting them take their own food, just the fact that they had to pay the bill immediately after ordering was enough to make many customers unwilling to pay the bill. The customers at the back of the line all looked at Meg and Yabamiya curiously when they heard that. Only Meg could come up with a rule that allowed customers to take their own food. In order to increase the efficiency of the meal and save time for everyone in the line, an ice cream shop is the first to introduce a method of paying the bill immediately after ordering, and then taking your own food according to the serial number. Meg explained with a smile. This was a method that was often used by small milk tea shops on the roadside. For shops with few seats, a high flow of customers, and food that could be eaten as they walked, this method of ordering was undoubtedly the most efficient. That's not a bad idea. Otherwise, we'd have to wait in line again when it comes to paying the bill. That way, we'll have plenty of food and clothing, Harrison said with a smile. That's right. If it were another restaurant, we might have to worry about whether it's worth the money, but Mr. Mac's restaurant allows customers to pay the bill immediately after ordering, so there's no problem with that, George chimed in. Smiles also appeared on the faces of all of the customers. That was exactly what they wanted to hear, and all of them quickly paid the bill before taking their own seats. Most of the customers were standing off to the side, looking curiously at Yabamiya, who was standing in the semi-open kitchen. They wanted to know how that delicious ice cream had been made. This new ice cream shop had also attracted the attention of many passers-by. After all, it was not easy to see such a beautiful restaurant. It was located in the central area of the Aden Square near the entrance, so the flow of people here was incomparable to that of Mamie's. This restaurant is so beautiful. It's not even lunchtime yet, so why are there still so many people here? They're most likely hired by the new restaurant. There are far too many people in the Aden Square who are using tricks like that. Who cares if it's fake or not? It's such a beautiful restaurant, so of course we have to go in and take a look. Many of the passers-by stopped in their tracks and walked into the ice cream shop with curiosity in their eyes. Soon, a long line had formed in the ice cream shop. Matcha ice cream number 1, chocolate ice cream number 2. The 3 ice cream machines began to operate at the same time, and Yabamiya quickly made one ice cream after another before handing it over to the customers with a sweet smile on her face. Some of the customers chose to stay in the ice cream shop to eat their ice cream, but there were also many customers who chose to eat their ice cream as they walked. I didn't think that making ice cream would be so easy. All you need to do is press 2 buttons. If I were in her shoes, I'd be able to do the same. I feel like that machine with a metallic sheen must be some kind of incredible treasure. The ice cream is being made from that machine. Mr. Mac is a man who values efficiency. He must have put a lot of effort into this machine. Otherwise, how could he make such delicious ice cream? All of the customers discussed among themselves in low voices upon seeing this. Their expectations were still a little different from reality. Boss, that thing must be very valuable. We can make 300 copper coins just by pressing it. It's been a while since we last opened, how about we steal it back? A thin and frail man in a set of black robes said in a soft voice to another man beside him, who was completely covered by a cloak. Chapter 629. The opening of the ice cream shop and the promotion of the new business model were smoother than Meg had expected. The customers that Mamie's had accumulated had a great effect on the ice cream shop. Moreover, Yabamiya could complete most of the work by herself. She only needed a helper to clean up and clean the tables. "What should we do?" Barbara asked softly as she looked at Yabamiya, who was running around in circles. "Just help clean up the tables," Meg said with a smile. Yabamiya once again proved her powerful ability. She was able to complete the 4 processes of ordering, paying, making, and calling the number without making a single mistake. "Mia is really amazing." Sally looked at Yabamiya with an unconcealable look of surprise on her face. She had to take care of so many things by herself. The workload was much more demanding on her mental strength than when she was at Mamie's. "Yeah, it's time to give her a raise." Meg nodded in agreement. Such an outstanding employee was hard to find anywhere else. After seeing that everything was running smoothly, Meg said goodbye to Yabamiya and the others and prepared to leave. When he reached the door, Meg squinted his eyes and looked at the 2 men in black standing in the corner. They looked a little out of place with the customers around them. They didn't look like they were here to eat ice cream, nor did they look like they were here to watch the fun. Their eyes were fixed on the ice cream machine behind Yabamiya, and they seemed to be discussing something in low voices. Meg made a mental note in his heart and pushed the door open. He wasn't so domineering that he would go up to them and question them if they looked at him in the wrong way. On the way back to the restaurant, Meg stopped by the blacksmith shop to check on Mobai's progress. Most of the steam engine parts were made in Mobai, so his progress would determine the final progress. The shirtless Mobai wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at Mag, and said, "Boss Mag, the precision requirements for these parts are too high. Even if I work overnight, I'll only be able to complete all of them by noon tomorrow at the earliest." Hee. Lulu smiled at Meg and continued to swing the big hammer in her hand. "No problem, as long as it's done by tomorrow night," Meg said with a smile. He was quite satisfied with Mobai's progress. When Meg returned to the restaurant and was about to start preparing the ingredients, the system's voice suddenly sounded, "Ding. Congratulations, you have completed the mission of opening the first branch. Reward, black pepper steak set 1x. You have opened an ice cream shop. You have triggered a hidden reward. You have unlocked a Haagen-Dazs ice cream cake. Black pepper steak. Ice cream cake. System, you're worth teaching." Meg's eyes lit up. He didn't expect to receive 2 rewards for this mission. Steak was his favorite. Although roast beef kebab was also beef, it was still very different from steak. "Host, please watch your words," the system protested sternly. "System, your father is very happy." Meg nodded. The black pepper steak made up for the lack of Western food in the restaurant, and the ice cream cake could enrich the ice cream shop's menu. To Meg, both were very good rewards. "Host, you're playing with fire," the system's voice sounded a little angry. "System, I plan to modify my background so that people won't associate me with Meg Alex. Do you have any good suggestions? Or can you give me a character that's just right for me?" Meg ignored the system's anger and asked with a smile. As Amy's influence grew, Meg naturally attracted more and more attention. If people were to investigate carefully, they would find that he had only brought Amy here 3 years ago, and had been living as a cripple since then. This was enough to make them associate him with Meg Alex. "No, Scram," the system said angrily. "Then why don't you modify the memories of everyone in this world? For example, make those who want to kill me forget about this matter. Then everyone will be at peace, and I'll just continue cooking." Meg was still unwilling to give up. "That's already against the rules of this world. This system will definitely not do that," the system said righteously. "Alright, looks like I'll have to rely on myself for this." Meg raised an eyebrow. It looked like starting with the system wouldn't work. How to tell a good story would determine how far he would go in the future. Although Meg had never started a business before, he was still quite familiar with the concept of starting a business. So, he knew how to tell a good story. However, what he needed now was the theme of the story. Meg put away the steak set and ice cream cake recipes that appeared in his mind. As he prepared the recipes for lunch, he began to think of countermeasures. He didn't know what would happen at the Aden Chamber of Commerce gathering in 2 days, so he had to do something first. It was his style to be prepared for any eventuality. On the first day of business, an ice cream shop sold a total of 510 ice creams, making a profit of 15,300 copper coins. When Meg heard Yabamiya's report, he couldn't hide the joy and surprise on his face. On the first day of business, he only sold ice creams. He had practically single-handedly supported the entire shop, yet he had made a profit of 150,000 copper coins, making a net profit of more than 100,000 copper coins. For Meg, a net profit of more than 100,000 copper coins in a day was a very good income. Now that Amy's revenue had almost reached its upper limit, it would be very difficult to increase the revenue without increasing the number of employees. That's more than 500 kebabs. Barbara swallowed her saliva. Big brother, should we do it? In the bushes outside the ice cream shop, a skinny man in black poked his head out and asked softly. Another tall young man in a cloak poked his head out and shook his head with a serious expression. Let's wait and see. There are still so many people on the street. It would be bad if we were discovered. We have to make sure that nothing goes wrong before we act. 10 minutes later. Big brother, should we do it? Wait a little longer. An hour later. Big brother, should we do it? Wait a little longer. Look, that drunkard is about to come out. The next day, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Big brother, should we do it? The skinny young man scratched his face, which was full of mosquito bites, and asked weakly. Huff, huff. The only response he got was a series of snoring sounds. Do it. It's because I followed such a big brother that I was so unlucky all the way from the Roth Empire. The skinny young man stomped his feet and grumbled under his breath. He crawled out of the bushes angrily and glanced at the ice cream shop indignantly. Then, he saw a cleaner walking over with a broom and a garbage cart, and slipped away. Madam, the annual Aden Chamber of Commerce Gala is going to be held again. Are you going this time? In an ancient castle built between the cliffs, a somewhat sinister voice echoed in the castle. A person covered in a black robe, whose figure and appearance could not be seen, slightly lowered his head in the direction of the throne. Chapter 630. Sigh. I'm so angry. Why did Mr. Mac make Big Sister Mia work at Mamie's as usual? This way, my plan to sneak over for ice cream during lunch break is completely impossible. But Mamie's is so far away. Yeah. I just wanted to come over for ice cream, but the ice cream shop's opening hours just happened to overlap with Mamie's. This is terrible. At the entrance of the restaurant, 2 girls looked at the opening hours hanging on the door and said angrily. Esther was a student at the Senior Magic Academy in Chaos School. She was 17 years old this year, and would graduate in a year. A 17-year-old 4th-tier magic caster. Such talent was above average in the magic world, and in her family, such talent was enough to make her not have to worry about anything for the rest of her life. So, naturally, she had a lot of pocket money in her pocket. However, the lunch break at Chaos School wasn't very long, and the distance between the school and Mamie restaurant wasn't very far. However, there were simply too many people in the line. There were several hundred people in the line, and they had already lined up before they had even finished school. If they wanted to eat the delicious ice cream, they would have to wait until after school in the evening. This was a form of torture. Many people passed by the ice cream shop with similar expressions. If they had time, they would line up at Mamie's. Time was tight, so they could only wait until next time. During lunch break, Meg borrowed one of the 3 vacant houses in Mumbai. After moving all the parts of the steam engine back, he closed the door and began to fiddle with it. He might only be a beginner in cooking, but when it came to assembling steam engines, he was a professional. When he was bored while writing his thesis, he took the steam engine apart for fun. System, I need a piston, a cylinder, 2 belts, and 4 wheels, Meg said in his mind as he spread out all the parts. Due to the limited production techniques and materials in this world, Meg did not want too many people to participate in the production process, so he still had to buy some parts from the system. No, the system replied decisively. Name a price. Meg pursed his lips. Host, this system is warning you. You are forcibly bringing this world into the age of steam and seriously interfering with the normal development of this world. It will have an immeasurable impact on this world, and it is very likely to trigger divine punishment and erase you from this world, the system said sternly. Could it be that Watt and Faraday were taken in by the heavens back then? They changed the course of Earth on 2 separate occasions. A steampunk world with swords and magic. Isn't it interesting? Meg pursed his lips. This is a further breakthrough made by the 2 scientists after the continuous research and development of their predecessors. This is inevitable in history, and also the normal process of the world's development. It's a completely different concept. The system was a little annoyed. System, let me ask you. Are you sure that Watt and Ferrari are not transmigrators? Maybe they were forced to cross over to Earth because they scolded the boss of some restaurant. Look at other systems. If you want a steam engine, you'll get it. If you want a generator, you won't grumble. You, on the other hand, not only do I have to do everything myself, but when I want to buy 2 parts from you, you have to talk a lot of sense to me. It's completely incomparable to other systems. Meg pursed his lips and said with some dissatisfaction. Who said that? How can those gluttonous and lazy fellows be compared to this system? If the heavenly axiom had given me a few trillion gold coins right from the start, all I had to do was give you money every day and force you to do missions. Being a lazy system like this would be too easy. The system cried out in grief and indignation. Looks like you're also short of money. Meg said softly with a strange expression. Nonsense. Don't you need money to develop production lines? Don't you need money to cultivate excellent seeds? Don't you need money to renovate materials? These things burn a lot of money. I broke a copper coin into 2 copper coins and now I still owe the system next door 20,000 copper coins. That son of a bitch, the heavens directly gave him a quota of 2 trillion copper coins and gave his host 50,000 copper coins a day. Every day, he chased me for 20,000 copper coins to pay back. Don't you think that's infuriating? The system's voice was getting more and more aggrieved. System, you're such a disgrace. Meg covered his face. He was probably the only one with this system. You still dare to say that? If it weren't for you. The system's voice suddenly became sharp. All right, I'll pack up those parts together. 20,000 copper coins. I'll let you pay back the money first so that you don't embarrass me everywhere. Meg directly interrupted the system. Really? The system's voice stopped abruptly, and it asked in disbelief. If you think it's too much, I can reduce it a little. Meg said with a look of indifference. How can that be? The system immediately responded and then asked tentatively, how about adding a little more? Then 20,001 copper coins it is. Meg nodded and smiled. I'll leave one for you to play with. Deal. The system responded quickly. After deducting the copper coins, it immediately went into production. The goods would be delivered in 5 minutes. After all the parts were in place, the steam engine was assembled without any difficulty. Soon, a complete 2-cylinder steam engine appeared in front of Meg. Meg wrapped the outer shell with metal. This way, the internal principle wouldn't be seen through at a glance by knowledgeable people. After adding water to the boiler, the coals that had been sprinkled with alcohol were lit. Steam flowed into the cylinders. As the pressure gradually increased, it began to push the pistons to and fro, which then moved the linkage mechanism and drove the flywheel to start rotating. The steam engine's first activation in this world is really a memorable moment. Meg looked at the rapidly rotating flywheel and listened to the sound of the steel parts colliding with each other. Although he was standing on the shoulders of countless giants to build this steam engine, the sense of accomplishment still made him excited. Now that I have the steam engine, the next step is to tell a good story. Meg's mouth curved into a smile. This was going to be a crucial step for him to take in this world. Thank you for saving me, young Master Cyril. My life is yours now. If you need anything in the future, feel free to ask me, and I'll be sure to do everything in my power to help you. In a room full of clocks and watches, Goodnia bowed deeply to Cyril, who was fiddling with a small pocket watch. Chapter 631. Goodnia glanced at Cyril's chest with a pained expression. That was the most expensive watch in his shop, but he bowed even more deeply, and said with a grateful expression, "You're right, I'll be sure to pay you back in full. It's just that DeVoe and the owner of Mamie's, don't mention DeVoe again, I'm worried that I'll be dragged into this mess. As for the owner of Mamie's, you've just been released, and if you don't want to be targeted by the Grey Temple again, I suggest you stay away from him. I'll take care of him for you." Cyril's smile faded as he took 2 steps closer to Goodnia, and whispered, "What you need to do now is keep an eye on Gloria and her little textile shop. Don't give her any trouble, yes?" Goodinia's expression changed, and he hurriedly nodded. "Young master, Goodnia has already been stripped of his position as a board member of the Chamber of Commerce, so he's not very useful to us anymore, right?" The man beside Cyril asked in a soft voice. "Goodnia was released by the Grey Temple, and we didn't spend a single cent on him. This idiot thinks we saved him. He's made a lot of money selling watches over the years, and he's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve. It'll be better for him to deal with Gloria than for me to do it myself." Cyril glanced at the gem-studded pocket watch in his hand, and tossed it to the man with a smile as he said, "Ask him if he wants to buy a watch." "Are we still going to do it tonight, big brother?" In a tea house, a skinny man in a black robe whispered to Noah Gould, who was wearing a black cloak. "Of course we're going to do it." Noah raised his voice a few octaves, but he quickly lowered his head and lowered the brim of his hat as he said in a deep voice, "But Luke, you left me behind last night. Do you think I won't beat you up?" "I went to buy breakfast for you, boss," Luke said with a smile. He lowered his head and rolled his eyes as he said, "If this guy's going to dawdle again, I'm not going to serve him anymore." "All right, then we'll go there later tonight. I heard that the people over there are very focused on tracking us down. If they find us, we'll lose our heads." Noah nodded in a low voice. The night was dark. Meg stood at the entrance of the restaurant and watched as Yabamiya and Sally slowly walked away. He turned over the sign on the door and closed it. A silver figure appeared on the treetops outside the restaurant and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Sally, who was walking to the right of Yabamiya, looked back cautiously, but she didn't see anything. She was puzzled. "What's wrong, Aisha?" Yabamiya turned to Sally with a concerned expression. "Nothing." Sally shook her head and turned to look at Yabamiya. "Mia, have you felt like someone is following you?" "Ah." Yabamiya faltered slightly upon hearing that. She recalled the feeling of being chased and followed in that alley that night. However, it was Elizabeth who had appeared in the end. She had even taken Yabamiya out of the city, and Sally didn't seem to like her very much. Yabamiya hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. No. That's good. Sally stared at Yabamiya for a while before nodding. You can go home first, Aisha. I want to stay in the ice cream shop for a while longer. Yabamiya stopped in her tracks as she passed by the ice cream shop. A smile appeared on her face as she looked at the ice cream shop. Sally took a glance at the ice cream shop, and nodded before departing. All right, you should go back soon too. Be careful on your way back. Yabamiya pulled out her keys and unlocked the door before making her way into the ice cream shop. The interior of the shop wasn't completely dark. There was a circle of small lights around the statue of the Ice Queen, and there was also a row of small lights around the restaurant, illuminating the entire ice cream shop without being intrusive. Mia circled the Ice Queen statue twice before looking up at the Ice Queen. She said softly, "My ice cream shop. Mother, do you see it? This is Mia's ice cream shop. It belongs to the owner, but I'm the owner now. If you were still here, we could live a good life together." A tear rolled down the corner of her eye before dripping onto the ground, but she didn't cry. It's her. On a tree branch outside the ice cream shop, Elizabeth was holding a ball that was glowing with a faint golden light. She was looking at the young woman who was sobbing silently in the ice cream shop with a complex expression on her face. The dragon origin was slightly hot in her hand. This was the final test that her father had given her, and it was also the only method that couldn't go wrong. After standing silently on the tree branch for a while, Elizabeth stowed away the dragon origin and disappeared from the tree branch. When she reappeared, she was already standing behind Gloria in the ice cream shop. Giant dragons don't cry. Gloria looked at Yabamiya, who was still sobbing silently, and her expression was just as cold as her voice. Ha! Yabamiya was taken aback. She turned around to look at Elizabeth, who had appeared behind her without her noticing. How did you get in? I locked the door. That door can't stop me. Elizabeth shook her head. Then, do you want to eat ice cream? Gloria hurriedly wiped the tears from her face before turning to Elizabeth with a concerned expression. Boss said that you can't eat ice cream before going to bed. Otherwise, you'll get a stomachache. If you really want to eat ice cream, you can come back tomorrow. Ha! Elizabeth faltered slightly upon hearing this. She looked at Yabamiya's concerned and serious expression, and felt as if this wasn't going in the direction that she had envisioned. I know that ice cream is very delicious, but it's cold, so it's not good to eat it before going to bed. Yabamiya continued to persuade her. Is she trying to get in my way? Elizabeth's heart shuddered, and she furrowed her brows as an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Ice began to spread from the soles of her feet, and the temperature in the ice cream shop instantly plummeted to freezing point. Could it be that the ice cream is colder than me? Phew. It's so cold. Yabamiya exhaled a puff of white air as she shivered with her arms around her shoulders. A hint of a smile flashed through Elizabeth's eyes, but she didn't immediately dispel the frosty aura around her. Even though you can make the air around you colder than ice cream, your heart is warm, I know that. Yabamiya looked up at Elizabeth with a smile. Her dazzling smile was like a sunflower blooming in the midst of ice and snow, and it was difficult for anyone to look away. The temperature in the ice cream shop had returned to its usual cool and comfortable state. See, I was right. Yabamiya's smile became even more vibrant as she looked at Elizabeth, who was in a daze. The hearts of frost dragons are also cold. Elizabeth cleared her throat, and her expression eased significantly. Her heart began to race at the sight of the dazzling smile on Yabamiya's face. It had been a long time since she had felt this way. Perhaps you're an exception. Yabamiya shook her head again. I'm here today to ask you a question. Elizabeth looked at Yabamiya with a serious expression and said, if you could choose, would you want to become a giant dragon that soars through the sky, or would you want to stay here as a waitress? Didn't you already ask that question yesterday? Of course I want to stay here as a waitress. Besides, I'm the store manager now, Yabamiya replied without any hesitation. Got it. Elizabeth looked at the innocent smile on Yabamiya's face, and fell silent for a moment before nodding and turning to leave. Wait. Yabamiya suddenly called out to Elizabeth. Elizabeth turned around to look at Yabamiya. I don't think you're going to sleep so early, so I'll secretly make you an ice cream. It'll be on my breakfast tomorrow. Yabamiya jogged into the kitchen and turned on the ice cream machine. She quickly made a vanilla ice cream and handed it to Elizabeth with a smile as she said, I remember you ordered vanilla ice cream last time. Thank you. Elizabeth looked at the ice cream in her hand and nodded. White light flashed beneath her feet, and she disappeared from the ice cream shop. What an interesting girl. Looks like giant dragons aren't as cold as I thought, Yabamiya murmured to herself with a smile as she turned around to clean up the ice cream machine. Chapter 632. Should we do it, Big Brother? Luke asked in a quiet voice as they stood in the bushes outside the ice cream shop. Noah shook his head and said, let's wait for a while longer. The lights in the shop are still on, and there are people in the neighboring shops as well. If we break that crystal door, we'll definitely be discovered, and it'll be bad if we get caught. That's not a problem at all, I can pick locks. Luke rolled his eyes as he stared at the transparent crystal door for a while. He then said in a quiet voice, how about we change our target and steal that door? I've never seen such a large and flat crystal door before. It'll definitely fetch a good price on the black market. Noah's eyes lit up, and he was also quite tempted. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he shook his head and said, no, we can't steal that crystal door, but if we steal that machine that can spit out ice cream, it'll be a golden goose that can lay golden eggs. Luke thought about it for a moment before nodding in agreement. That's true. The two of them continued to lie prone in the bushes, and the sky was getting darker and darker. All of the shops around them had closed, and there were no pedestrians on the streets. All right, now's the time. Noah's eyes lit up, and he immediately stood up. Luke had been dozing off with his head resting on Noah's arm, and he fell headfirst into the ground. He faltered momentarily before getting to his feet, and patting the dirt off his face as he grumbled, Boss, even if you're a thief, you have to be more professional. Long time no see, Noah Goodale. Right at this moment, 5 black figures emerged from all directions, surrounding Noah and Luke. The leader of the group was a tall and broad knight with a black heavy sword hanging from his waist. Standing beside him was a tall and thin young elf with a wand in his hand. The rest of the group were all knights in soft armor, and they were all glaring at Noah with ferocious expressions. Go! Knox's expression changed as he pulled out his long sword. He gently pushed the dumbstruck Luke aside, and he rushed into the arms of the young man beside him. Before the latter had a chance to react, the long sword had already pierced through his heart, and he continued onward into the depths of the Aiden Square. Go after him. Baizen glanced at the dead young man on the ground before chasing after Noah with his sword in hand. Everyone else also followed suit. What the fuck? Luke looked at the corpse lying on the ground. His face instantly turned pale, and the hand holding the dagger at his waist trembled. He glanced at the depths of the square where the sounds of fighting could be heard. He swallowed his saliva and ran in the opposite direction. So what Boss said was true. There really are people chasing after him, and people will really die. Luke felt as though his legs were no longer his own, but his speed was faster than usual. You even gave birth to a half-elf bastard. Baizen sneered at Noah with a derisive sneer. What do you know? Do you know what love is? As long as those two are still alive, so what if I die? Noah looked up at Baizen as if he were looking at a clown. A cold smile appeared on Baizen's face, and he said, That's right, I don't know anything about love, but if I can find them, I'll enjoy them first before killing them. I heard that they were great beauties back in the day. No, you won't get the chance. A burst of light abruptly erupted from Noah's eyes, and his long sword abruptly accelerated. An inky black sword projection tore through everything before piercing into Baizen's heart. At the same time, Baizen's long sword also pierced into Noah's heart. His eyes were wide with incredulity, and he was still unable to believe that he was going to die here. How can I rest in peace if you don't die? A faint smile appeared on Noah's face as he collapsed onto the grass. Arg! A low growl escaped Baizen's throat, and he mustered the last of his strength to pull out a piece of parchment. He tried to tear it apart, but he only managed to grab it halfway before his head lolled to the side, and he was already dead. Chapter 633. Meg wasn't very adept at disposing of corpses, but Alex was. As such, he was able to turn the situation into one where one of them had been killed, while the other escaped with severe injuries. After returning to the dining room, Meg calmly burned his blood-stained clothes to remove all possible traces. He then went upstairs to take a shower before returning to his room. He turned on the small lamp on his desk and unrolled the parchment. The blood-stained parchment contained information about a person. According to the portrait, Meg could tell that the handsome young man in the portrait was none other than the bearded man that he had just buried. Noah Gould. Meg murmured to himself before carefully reading through the information recorded on the parchment. He had already roughly scanned through the information recorded on the parchment, which was why he had decided to hide the bearded man's body. Noah Gould was the eldest son of the current generation of the Gould family. He was quite handsome and talented, and was quite a renowned young master in Rodu when he was young. The ancestor of the Gould family had once been the king's chef, and had once sacrificed his life to save the king from an assassination attempt. As such, the Gould family became one of the nobles of Rodu, but after a few generations, they had already declined to become a third-rate noble family. Noah Gould was believed to be the heir to the Gould family, but he fell in love with the same elven woman as young Master Timothy of the Barclay family, and the Gould family was destroyed. 4 years ago, Gould fled Rodu with his wife and half-elf daughter, and they were the only survivors of the Gould family. After that, they disappeared without a trace. Timothy sent people to hunt them down, and Baizen was one of those people, which led to the events that had transpired tonight. Meg carefully browsed through the information as well as some of his memories of Rodu. After about 10 minutes, he slowly put down the parchment in his hand with furrowed brows, and said, "When this guy didn't have his beard, he looked quite similar to me, and his height was also about the same. Furthermore, the time that he left Rodu, and the age of his half-elf daughter, everything matches perfectly. The Barclay family is loyal to Sean, and they have quite a powerful background in the military. Eric is most likely Timothy's father, and he's an extremely warmonger. Rather than fighting both Josh and Sean at the same time, it's clearly more appropriate to reduce our opponent to a second-generation heir." Meg rose to his feet and burned the parchment into a pile of ashes. He looked at the Grey Temple members who were busy outside Mamie, and his brows furrowed as he said, "Noah Gould, I'll use this name for you. I'll avenge you in the future." Monkey lowered his voice, and reported to Bazer, "Captain, after our search, we found that 4 people and an elven magic caster died from the ice cream shop all the way to Mamie restaurant. This should be the place where the battle ended. Another person ran away. Monkey, take some people and follow this trail. T-Test a 4th tier incident, TS, T, level 4, S is AS. Barkley wore a grave expression. 5 people had died in the Aden Square, and that was no small matter. A fierce battle had taken place in the Aden Square a few days ago, but nothing was left of the scene aside from a mess. Who would have thought that such a gruesome murder would take place in just a few days? Barkley squatted down to examine Basin's body. After a brief silence, he rose to his feet and turned toward Mamie. "Team leader, I don't know if I should say something," one of the team members said in a quiet voice. "Speak." Barkley glanced at him. "The ice cream shop is owned by Mr. Mack's family, and the first victim we found was in front of the ice cream shop, while the last victim was in front of Mamie's." "Is that really just a coincidence?" the team member asked in a quiet voice. "You guys continue to investigate here. I'll go ask around." Barkley nodded and led the two to Mamie's. He didn't think that Meg had anything to do with this, but the starting and ending points were indeed suspicious. Also, this was the scene of the last crime, so there should have been a fierce battle there. At such a close distance, there should have been some noise. Meg stood by the window and watched as Baser knocked on the door for a long time. After that, he grabbed a handful of hair and put on a set of pajamas before going downstairs to open the door. He looked at Baser with a confused expression, and asked, "Captain Baser, why are you here?" "The restaurant is closed." "Mr. Mack, I'm not here to eat," Barkley said with a smile. Barzil shook his head with a smile. However, his gaze suddenly sharpened as he carefully appraised Mag, and he said, "There was a murder case up ahead, and the murderer shouldn't have gone far yet. This place is the closest to your restaurant, so I wanted to ask you if you heard anything or saw anyone suspicious." "Someone died in front of my restaurant again." Meg raised an eyebrow, as if suddenly awake. He looked in the direction of the lawn and shook his head. "I fell asleep after I coaxed Amy to sleep. I didn't hear anything in between. Because I'm sensitive to noise, the restaurant was designed with good soundproofing. Let alone a fight, if you didn't trigger the doorbell, I wouldn't have heard anything." "The soundproofing of Mr. Mack's restaurant is that good?" Barkley was a little surprised, and then he asked with a smile, "Can I go in and experience it?" "Of course." Meg nodded, and stepped aside to make way. "You two fight outside the restaurant," Barkley said to the two men. The sound of swords clashing against each other could be heard. Barkley walked into the restaurant, and Meg closed the door. The ear-piercing sound of swords immediately became as soft as a mosquito's buzzing. If one didn't pay attention, they would barely be able to hear it. This made Barkley feel a little incredulous. The soundproofing of the bedroom is better than this. It can almost block out all sound. Meg shrugged with a smile, and said, "There's a waitress from the restaurant upstairs. If you have any questions, you can come and ask her tomorrow morning. She should still be sleeping soundly right now." "No need. Mr. Mack's pursuit of quality sleep is really amazing. It seems like you really can't provide any useful information. I won't disturb your rest, then. I'll be sure to come for dinner tomorrow when I'm free." Barkley shook his head with a smile. His doubts had been completely dispelled. He nodded at Meg, turned around, and left the restaurant with the two Grey Temple members. Life is like a play. It all depends on acting. Meg shrugged, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. Now that the problem of his identity was solved, he could do some things freely. Chapter 634. The annual mid-year banquet of the Aden Chamber of Commerce was one of the most important festivals for the Aden Chamber of Commerce. All of the members of the Aden Chamber of Commerce, as well as all of the important figures in Chaos City, would be present. Such a grand event naturally became a showcase for the women to showcase their taste and nobility. If one could stand out among a group of women of noble status and wealth, they would be able to boast about it for at least half a year. Hence, the wives and daughters of the nobles and wealthy merchants would always bring out their most extravagant outfits and dress up. Luna, which of these 100 dresses should I wear to the banquet today? In the city lord's castle, Vivian held on to Luna's hand as she pushed open a door. 100 dresses of all types and sizes appeared before her eyes, all of which were shimmering with gems and gold. Luna stood at the door with her mouth slightly agape. She looked at the rows of dresses hanging all over the room, and couldn't help but burst into laughter as she said, "You're crazy. Didn't you dislike wearing dresses in the past? Why are there suddenly so many of them?" "That was in the past." Vivian raised an eyebrow and said, "Actually, I still don't like wearing dresses, but there are some things that I have to try. Besides, I used to see all of those women dressed to the nines. Today, I'm going to redefine what a woman should wear." "Then why don't you pick one yourself?" Luna pointed at all of the dresses in the room. "It's not like I don't know how to do it. I usually wear plain dresses, but those rich ladies who think they're beautiful in gold and silver wouldn't be interested in dresses like that. They're a bunch of women who have their heads stuffed with gold." Vivian was a little angry. "You can't blame them for that. I saw young Mistress Hill wearing a red dress all the time. She's also beautiful, but there's not a single bit of gold on it," Luna said with a smile. "Don't even mention that woman. She's a freak. While we're still thinking about where to go, she's already planning to build a place for us to play. That woman's aura is invincible." Vivian rolled her eyes, but she was completely convinced. That's why dresses and clothes don't necessarily look better with more things hanging on them. Otherwise, wouldn't a dress made of gold become the center of attention? Luna nodded slightly. "Yeah. Why didn't I think of that?" Vivian's eyes lit up, and she turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Luna quickly reached out to stop him. "I'll ask the master in the manor to see if he can make a pure gold dress for me before tonight," Vivian said matter-of-factly. "At this time, they'll probably be able to wrap you in a round skirt with gold pieces." Luna rolled her eyes. This little girl was insane. "When the time comes, you'll definitely be the center of attention. However, instead of being envious and jealous, you'll be ridiculed instead. What kind of nouveau riche dress like this? Is that so?" Vivian stopped in her tracks with a sheepish smile. "I'll choose one for you. This dress is pretty good. It's aqua blue with light green patterns, and there's a slit in the hem. It'll be perfect for you to show off your long legs and make those women jealous." Luna walked into the dressing room and picked out a dress for Vivian. "All right, I'll take this one. Luna, you can choose one for yourself too. We'll form a team of long-legged beauties and dazzle those women." Vivian accepted the dress with a satisfied expression before turning to Luna. "No need for that. I'm fine with this." Luna shook her head. "No, you're an esteemed guest from Rodu, so you have to wear something that suits you." Vivian shook her head with a smile as she said, "Furthermore, all of the people who will be here today are the wealthiest people in Chaos City. However, don't trust those slippery mouths. It shouldn't be difficult to get some money from them to buy some food and necessities for those children." Luna's eyes lit up, and she nodded without any hesitation. "All right. Young mistress, if you want to enter the venue earlier, then you should set off now." In the Suede textile shop, which had already been renamed to Suede, Mars looked at Gloria, who had already put on her dress, and was looking at herself in the mirror with an astonished look in his eyes. He didn't think that the shy little girl from all those years ago would already be so beautiful. Her gorgeous and regal dress made her look even more flawless. Gloria didn't turn around. Instead, she shook her head and asked, "Mars, what's the latest entry time?" "According to the rules, Master and the City Lord should be the last to enter the venue, so they'll be entering the venue at around 7 p.m., Mars replied. Marzu said, and then added, but the rest of you must enter before that. Gloria turned to Mars, and asked, how confident are you that the guards will let us in if we're late? With your status, there's no way that the guards will turn you away. Furthermore, I'm very familiar with Charlotte, who's in charge of entering the venue this time. Mars' eyes gradually lit up as he looked at Gloria. He seemed to have figured out what she wanted to do. Then we'll be there at 7 p.m., Gloria said with a smile. All right, I'll make the arrangements right away. Mars nodded before quickly departing with a gratified smile on his face. Looks like Mr. Meg has taught young mistress many things. Furthermore, she really is more suited to be a businesswoman than Lance. Father, we're not holding a banquet today. Are we going to attend a banquet instead? In the dining hall, Amy asked for the third time as she looked down at Meg, who was helping her adjust her belt. She was wearing a pink and white traditional Chinese dress. Yes, it's that big sister in the red dress who invited us. We can have fun tonight. Meg straightened up and nodded at Amy in satisfaction. Amy's long silver hair was tied into a small bun with a cute jade hairpin inserted diagonally into it. He tied it up with a belt, which accentuated her slim waist. The cut was just right, and it fully displayed the elegance and liveliness of the traditional Chinese dress. Will there be a lot of people coming? Amy asked curiously. Probably. Perhaps many of the people we know will be there. Meg nodded with a smile as he loosened the collar of his pink shirt. He was very experienced in attending banquets like this. He was wearing a well-ironed suit, which matched his perfect figure, perfect appearance, and a beard that added a touch of vicissitudes. He was definitely going to win over everyone present. Of course, he didn't have any plans to stop being single, but it was time for him to start showing off. If there are a lot of people, then there must be a lot of delicious food, right? Amy's eyes lit up. She was obviously paying attention to something else. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.